online.
Welcome, Teresa.
I'm going to go ahead and move her to a panelist. So she has the opportunity to participate. Donna Gustafson. Here. Valerie Highfield. Here. Carla Kimsey. Here. Michael Marshall.
Here.
Karen Martinez. Here. Ryan Schimmel.
Here.
Mariana Valenzuela. Here. Mayor Winchell. Here. And Chair Thomas.
Here. Thank you very much. At this point, we have an opportunity for public comment. Please limit the time that you take to 2 minutes unless other arrangements are made. I understand we have someone that wanted to offer public comment tonight, correct? Yes. If you, do we need to have him come closer to the?
Go down here.
Closer to
Down
that
the
way.
corner.
Down to the corner, if you wouldn't mind, please. And
Yep,
begin
chair.
with introducing yourself.
Yes.
Evening. Their faces, hope you're all well. There's a lot of chair, Mayor Wenzel, city councilors, chiefs, lots of
We got the big guns here.
local dignitaries here. So hello and good to see you, including obviously the budget committee. Thanks for your service. My name is Sean Cardwell. I'm the executive director of the Forest Grove Foundation. The Forest Grove Foundation is a social service agency located in Forest Grove that serves our community members that suffer the effects of poverty, including homelessness, food insecurity, behavioral health issues, and substance use disorder. I bring comments and advocacy for future discussion concerning the National Opioid Settlement Funds the city of Forest Grove receives. The line item is located in miscellaneous revenue and shows projected amounts of revenue in the range of approximately $50,000 per year. I'll trust that if that changes, that is not my business, but you guys and the city staff know where that's at and how much there really is there. I'll trust the report and I thank you for providing it. My hope tonight is to plant or perhaps water a seed that those opioid settlement funds remain in Forest Grove. I'm not sure the committee will make decisions at such a granular level in the budget, but your support to help advocate that those funds get allocated to local work on this topic is very important to our community. There are 5 areas in which those funds can and need to be utilized: purchasing naloxone or similar drugs that reverse opioid overdose, leadership planning and coordination of this work in our town, prevention programs, that's 3. 4th is supporting people in treatment and recovery, and lastly, tribal funding for support of opioid remediation. It has been reported in previous councils. The council has discussed this topic, I think most recently as the end of 2023. And I haven't been able to find anything in between, so I apologize if some other decisions have been made. But it was reported then that at the city council, the city was not in the business of any of those service areas, which may or may not be true. However, other local organizations in our community are very much in that business. Please consider allocating 100% of those dollars to local organizations to do work in those 5 areas. Specifically, please consider allocating any or all of those dollars to the Forest Grove Foundation. We do work in 3 of the 5 areas, including providing naloxone, providing leadership and coordination in all those conversations countywide, and supporting people in recovery and behavioral health, which includes peer support, harm reduction, and transportation to those services throughout the county. Thanks for your time. I welcome any follow-up conversations and any opportunity for a more formal presentation on the topic.
Shall I have a question for you?
Yeah.
I think you're probably aware that the funds currently are going to the county for a program that they administer. What is the relationship of your organization to that in terms of any overlap?
My understanding from the last, again, if I have missed an update, was that half of those dollars were going to the county and that there was a future council decision about where the other half and future dollars would go. If that decision was made previously in between the end of 2023, I rewatched that meeting, so I don't know what's happened since. So our relationship to that is like any other service provider in the county. It will be a great resource. What's the challenge is the distance to accessing those resources. So one of the things that this kind of funding can provide in the service population is transportation to those resources. Could be doing that work here, but then when the CAT is what you're referring to, comes online, then that will be a massive resource in our community. But if I'm frank, the amount of money it takes to run the CAT, $50,000, we'll buy some whiteboards, and $50,000 at Force Grove will change some lives. Not too frank.
Are there any other questions for Sean?
We do support that work, don't get me wrong, but it's a many, many millions of dollar project that $50,000 will go a long way in town.
Thank you, Sean. Appreciate it.
Yeah, and thanks for your work on the budget, and thanks to the council for the work on this topic. I just want to bring it up again and keep it fresh. Thank you.
Are there any online comments that need to be considered?
I do not see anybody in attendance online with their hand raised.
All right. Let's move on to item C on the agenda, which is consent agenda. Do we have a motion that we approve minutes of April 15th and May 13th?
So moved.
Do I have a second? Seconded by Tom. Is there any discussion about this? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the consent agenda consisting of those two meeting minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Unanimously approved. Item D is additions or deletions. Does anybody have any items that they would like to add or change or move on our agenda tonight? I would like to propose one addition that we would do after item F and before item G. And so I'll make a motion that we add this item to the agenda. The item is to have a brief discussion among budget committee members about whether the tools that we are providing you to analyze and review the budget are meeting your needs. Whether you wish you had differently, timeliness, different formats, different kinds of data. So be thinking about that, if you would, please. And we'll talk about that briefly if anybody will second my motion to add that to the agenda. All right.
Who is the second? Sorry.
I think it was Donna. All right, any further discussion about this proposal? Yeah, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Very good. So we'll have that between F and G. All right, then let's go to E, and I think we'll be turning the time over to Paul for this part.
Okay. That presentation up, so we'll get started. We're going to start with building permits.
That's it. Okay. Maybe use advance the slide for now.
Maybe you should touch.
Probably not the budget. It's back there.
Sharon?
Oh, sharing online. Why should do that? So you can hand out the capital improvement plan stuff, so we get that done.
Right now?
Yeah, why don't we get that now? Try to do it next. It's not part of the, think it's part of the agenda, but we'll work with it next.
Well, Chair, if I may, while we're waiting,
Yes.
I learned of a TikTok sensation. There's this Dubai pistachio chocolate.
Oh my God, it's so good.
Yeah. So there's some over there. Please grab it.
That's like.
Walk
Stretch it on.
by.
That helps.
so good. First, you had me scared. I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little scared. With the TikTok.
Is it sharing?
With Zoe verified.
There we go.
This thing doesn't work. Oh, there it is. Okay. Just tell me next slide.
I can try. I think.
We get rid of that.
Ryan, are you seeing the screen?
I am.
Okay, wonderful, thank you.
Online.
Only they want.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
They don't have the copies.
How do we get rid of that top thing?
Oh, you can make sure Jamie is one. All right, we're gonna, purpose tonight, we're gonna talk about the building permits fund left over from last week, and we're gonna talk about the capital improvements program. Not gonna go through everything in it, obviously, then we'll start through the utility funds, line power first, followed by public works. Do the other funds. And then we'll take any public comment on the budget, and see if the committee's got any questions or any information they want for next week. Yeah, screen. So the next screen. Oh, he's working on the technical aspects. Well, the building permits. Paragraph PNC says this fund is fully funded by reserves generated by building permit fees. Revenues generated by building permit fees, and has a healthy reserve balance, which would allow the city to not make immediate changes if building activity slows. And you can see the next paragraph down that talks about July 1st, projecting we're gonna have about $5.5 million of fund balance in this fund, which is equal to almost 4 years of current operating expenses, even if no additional permit revenue is collected. So there is a healthy fund balance in here. Building permit revenue can only be used on activities related to the building permit function. What we did during the during the staff review of the building permit fund was we requested the community development directors and asked to review building permit fees in light of the council's goal to support housing stability and potentially lower building permit fees to use down some of the reserves. We have no need for those kind of reserves. So we've asked the community development director to come up with a plan to help lower them potentially through lower fees.
Is there any other creative ways that we can utilize those funds and still be legal? That's a lot of money.
I mean, we can look at it some more, but you don't want the state building permit division. I mean, they will regulate it. They'll come to look at what you're spending it on. I mean, this is $5.5 million worth of reserve, even after I took $3.1 million out of there for the addition that we put up at City Hall. I've already.
So that was a creative use.
I already got creative on it once, so and we pay for the order of the fire marshal's permit salary out of here because they do life and safety reviews as part of building permits.
Good. Creative. I like that.
Next line down is when the associate planners hired, in fiscal year 26-27, we're going to pay for half of that position out of this fund.
I only have it.
Yes.
Is there a list of actual eligible expenses?
I don't know if there's a list of actual eligible expenses. It's just that if you steer too far from building permit activities, you'll find yourself getting a reminder that it's only for building activities.
But is it like how development related? Like
Yeah,
infrastructure?
not infrastructure.
Engineering review, design review, waiving SECs for ADUs, would those be eligible?
I don't think you'd waive it, use it for any waive investment. See about ADUs, electric engineering design, we can look at it. I mean, We already used it for the building for the fire marshal and life safety area. So I mean, we can take a look at, see what we're doing. And we charge administrative portion of the new assistant city manager salary will come out of this fund because that person's going to be assigned to oversee the community development department. So
What about coming up with a set of approved plans that for ADUs and things like that, that people could use to further speed the process and minimize their cost? Is that something that could be done?
I mean, something can be done has been talked about. I know the state's actually coming up with, there's actually coming up with plans for like single family houses and other stuff that basically there won't be any review required on. So it's, I mean, there are items like that in motion at various levels. Try to cut down the amount of review time. Plus, some cities are very, very slow on putting permits out. We typically get a permit out probably within 2 weeks for a house after we get it. But other cities take months to get a housing permit out in Washington County. So
Yeah, so anything that we could do along those lines, even though there may be moves afoot elsewhere, we don't have to wait.
okay, Sally gave you we're gonna go to the capital improvements plan. Briefly, this is something we asked the budget committee to approve each time. And we're not gonna go through all the projects, obviously, and this is for the next several years, the next 5 years, from 25 to 30. So you'll see we divided up in administration, light power, major equipment, streets, sewer, water, surface water management, public safety is police, fire, and then parks and recreation. So we asked the departments to submit these to us. We try to match up anything that's in the first 2 columns should be in the budget. Of course, I'm going to say the first exception is the first line on the plan under administration. That is going to be the exception here.
Subject to a certain vote.
Subject to a certain vote tonight. We should know the result of that vote before we leave tonight. So sure.
Fingers crossed, toes crossed.
Sure, we can get somebody to go on it a little after 8 to look up the results. So you see, for example, the new police facilities at $31,450,000. I know that's less than the bond we're asking. That's more than the bond we're asking for, but there'll be some interest earnings on those funds after we get them. So there'll be some other funds, money that will be there. Another one, next one, for example, replace the police facility roof. Depending on what's done with that building, would be about $840,000 expense out for 5 years. We just put sprayed a thick layer of silicone down on it as a patchwork project to try to get us through the next 5 years while we try to decide what's going to happen with that building. Phone system upgrade will not cost near that much. That one will change that one down. GIS migration, the utilities network. So these are some of the examples, some of the administrative projects. You'll see one here for recarpeting the library down at the bottom of the administration section. Carpeting is getting fairly old in there now. It's from the originals, from the expansion when we did 2002 or 2001. So big expansion. And they're looking at various alternatives rather than recarpeting all at once. They're looking at potentially replacing carpeting in the high use areas and then kind of working their way through the building. Light and power, we're going to talk about most of these capital projects tonight. Major equipment. This will be a lot of the equipment that we're purchasing. The equipment fund is spending a lot of money next year. A lot of large equipment is buying, and we'll talk about that when we get to the equipment fund. Streets. The Safe Routes School Sidewalk Project, which is grant for annual curb ramp improvements. So you can see the type of projects that are in here, and I'll let you guys kind of go through it next week. We'll review water. There's a very large project in the water called the storage tank. replacement, which we'll talk about tonight. There's some joint water commission projects, which we do.
So these line items are all in the column. The budget.
They should all be in the budget. We'll do a final check on that over the next week to make sure that they're in there, or if they're not in there, we'll correct it on here. And this will be added to the budget document online here, probably towards the end of this week. And if you turn back, you'll see there's, if you go to some of the projects, there'll be, example, if you go to some of the vehicle fire projects are listed, equipment's listed first, so you'll see the equipment fund. Go to the third page, you'll see equipment fund, you'll see the projects by year again. You'll see the totals. It doesn't list the specific equipment in here yet. So, list the funding. Now, if you go to the next page, you'll see vehicle replacement for fire apparatus. You'll see your equipment, then you'll see general fund and fire district, because the fire district pays for half of the vehicles. So for each of the projects, you'll see kind of what the expense is, and then you'll see what the funding is. So for fire, a lot of it's happening is for fire.
So back to this page 3, the equipment replacement program, that's $1 million.
Mhm.
How do we figure out how that's broken out?
You'll see it tonight when I go through the equipment funds. And that'll be, yeah, we'll. There's still,
Just a little granular.
We're-
type
yeah,
out there.
we're gonna put more detail into this. I'm gonna have Jamie help us over the next couple of days, but it's been interesting trying to get the budget together and get everything else done this year, along with myself and Sally, so. For the past over a month or so. But this is somewhat still a work in progress, but you can kind of go through it as you're looking at things and see specifically what some of the items are gonna be purchased.
In light of last week, bringing up the maintenance of the police facility,
Mhm.
I guess regardless of a bond passage.
We're gonna talk about that during we're gonna talk about the police and some of the stuff we found out during the major maintenance. I'm gonna get to that tonight.
By the way, during the calls portion, if you have a question, just go ahead and ask. You don't need to wait to be recognized.
I'll let you go through the rest of this on your own time. So let's move back to the presentation. We're going to the Light Power Fund. Keith wants to come up to the chair that Sean sat in. Are you move over, Jesse, move over there. Keith, sit by me. Let's see here. Jesse's not good. Okay. Otherwise, this fund is funded by charges for electricity provided within the line power service area, which does go outside of the city limits. Power is purchased from Bonneville Power Administration. So we talk about federal power, or we're talking about Bonneville Power, it's the same thing. Same thing we talked about this. Sometimes I say federal instead of Bonneville, but it's. And Bonneville, PPA is initially proposed increasing electric rates by 10.37%, transmission rates by 17.9% on October 1st of this year. That rate increase will be good for the next 3 years. There's 3 years left on our contract with BPA through 2028. So this is going to be good for the 3 years. We'll be asked to sign a new contract with BPA fairly shortly. And transmission costs are about 14% of the total BPA cost. So we pay $1 million a year, about $1 million for power bill, 1 month, 40 of that is for transmission. Those increases are expected to be slightly low, somewhat lower when BPA sets its final rates in August. We're working with our electric rate consultant to determine the effect on the increase on Forest Grove rates. We expect to have a council work session in August or September on that. Staff continue to discuss what improvements can be made to the distribution system to improve reliability. We'll be proposing the expenses to begin moving forward on some projects.
I noticed, oh, maybe this is true. It was $6 million of miscellaneous.
I'm gonna take this, I'm gonna send you. Detail. Answer the question, answer to.
I see that. I'll throw another question out that probably Keith can answer. The narrative talks about dividend distributions that BPA issues. It's not all about when do they do that and how often, how reliable is it?
Yeah, that was one of your sets of questions. How do you want me to address these questions?
I just go ahead and answer that one. We're gonna, go ahead.
So the revenue distribution policy, the RDC, it's in the BPA statutes that if they make a certain amount of money above what their projections are, they're required to do something with that excess money. It's up to the administrator to decide what is going to be done with it. In these couple of years, a portion of it was assigned to debt. Another portion was assigned to fish mitigation. And then a third portion of it was assigned to be given back to the customers, all of about 140 of us. So I think we received around 1.2 million one year and a little bit less the second year. It's not a common occurrence. Their secondary revenues were way higher than they expected. In other words, what they sell on the market was the driving cost for it. And you got to remember, 3 or 4 years before that, we actually had to pay an extra dividend because of what's called a crack. Another acronym they use when they actually project too little revenue, they can actually come back on all of us and do special assessments. So it can cycle back and forth. Does that answer?
Yeah, so now we really can't budget in advance.
Oh.
We don't know when or if those monies are coming.
We're gonna talk about, but for us, based on our last rate review, you said that we did electric rates were increased by 9.5%.
You speak up a little bit more.
Sorry,
Thank you.
electric rates were increased by 9.5% on January 1st, 2024, and 6% effective January 1st, 2025. And again, as I said on the last page, the proposed BPA rate increases on October 1st will likely cause another rate increase.
Will that, sorry to interrupt, but will that happen like mid-year or will it be another increase January of 2026? Would we have to adjust? I guess the question is, so I was looking at that last slide, that's my question is, do we have to increase more than we anticipate if you're going to, and will we have to do it mid-cycle?
Typically, we've been doing the light power rates around January 1st, and part of that is so we don't wait till July 1st and then hit the residents with a bunch of water rate increases and sewer rate increases and everything else at one time. That's why we've been trying to do the line power around January 1st. I mean, it doesn't have to be quite January 1st. It can be, a month.
So we're still on track just to next January?
Yeah.
We'll do it.
Could I add something? Yeah. So there is a strong desire to try to match the BPA rate increase, which is October 1st. And secondary to that is we're not hitting our customers at the highest peak of the year, which is usually December, January. So that's why we're, actively working on the rate consultant stuff now and have an August workshop plan. So a work session planned already.
And okay, so that work session, we can discuss changing it to October.
Mhm.
Maybe we can decide, okay, so there'll be a work session in August,
Mhm.
and that will give us some time to figure out all of it.
Yeah.
And what we need to do. Okay, great,
Mhm.
thank you.
And also, all of our new BPA power we purchased for city use is now tier 2 power, since we're well past our tier 1 obligation. Remember, the tier 2 is more expensive than the tier 1. And tier 1 is still about 90% of our power purchases, but that will change over time as we start having more tier 2 power.
If a data center comes in, does that push us into tier 2 faster?
No, it doesn't, because we're already into tier 2. And if the data center comes in, it also doesn't affect, it won't affect people, everybody else's rates. We've set up new rate schedules for large users, whether it be a data center or another large user, where they will be billed, they'll be billed to tier 2 power rates. For example, if a new house is built, we blend it. We just put it in with everybody else into the pot, and then they pay the same mixture as everybody else. But we don't want to do that with a large data center, because that could cause us to raise our rates an additional, say, 8-10% for the residents. So we don't want to do that. So we've set up an alternate rate for the large power customers. And if they're above a certain amount of power, then they go above 10 megawatts, and they go into what's called a new large load, large single load that they have to buy. And it's a different power buying situation altogether. And speaking of that, the RDC credit he was talking about, we got about 1.4 million remaining over 2.6 that we received BPA, and we're using the rest of those funds to help continue bearing the overhead cables and potential wildfire risks. Some of that will be picked done with a grant, DOE, but some of it's still going to be done with these RDC credits that we have remaining. And then we'll start partially design and construct purchase some of the infrastructure projects that we'll talk about in the next few slides. Personnel service costs are budgeted to be about almost $10.5 million, 19% of the total operating expenditures in the coming biennium. Compare that to like the general fund, personnel service costs are about 81% of the operating costs. Raised and White Power is somewhat smaller than us. And the general fund is the next line. Purchase power is budgeted to increase by 11% to about $29 million over the next biennium. That amount represents 53% of White Power's total proposed operating expenses, compared to about 46% for the current. So rates have gone up, we're using more, so we'll be going up, so we'll be using more power and paying more for the power that we're using. Continue the next biennium, we're budgeting about another $200,000 for revenue from clean fuel credits. I know the revenue's not down a little bit because the price fluctuates on that program, because they go up and down. And right now, I think it's on the downside. It is. So, and that money is used for, and that's based on the number of electric vehicles registered in our department service area. Continue to use spend on electric vehicle chargers, electric vehicle bicycle rebate programs. And I think they might even have a couple other little things they give now. They spend it on. That's about it right now. That's about it.
And those dollars come from the state.
DEQ. Yeah, from DEQ.
Keith, are those programs still being subscribed to at a fairly high rate? I know that the bike program was so oversubscribed, so we have to lower the rebate. I'm just wondering, are those still successful, or do we need to look at that?
They are. We have to be careful because we're not generating near as many funds because the actual credit amounts halved or even more. So, yeah, we don't really want to add any new programs at this point.
Those are great programs, great advice from the team. Penny, that's great.
Yeah,
This
we're
is
still
widely
getting,
popular.
we're probably every 2 weeks pay periods, we're still probably getting 3 to 4 EV chargers and same amount of bikes. Every
Kudos, good
couple
job.
weeks.
Okay, credit card fees are expected to decline as finance staff negotiated lower rates for card usage. And this will also apply to the other utility funds as well. So we're going to start talking about some capital outlay on the next couple pages.
With each individual bank, or is there a way?
No, it's with the processor. Negotiate a lower fee with the processor. Okay, and we'll talk about starting about all these, all about the capital projects below. I want to note that none of the proposed capital projects are being caused by the proposed data center, which is constructing a separate electric system, which will be turned over to the city upon completion and acceptance by the city.
What are the major components of the septic system? Distribution, transmission line?
Oh, I keep talking about that.
Yeah, so we're in the final stages of design right now. They'll be adding two large transformers at two of our substations, or Filbert. and
Expanding
Forestburg.
their existing.
That's correct, yeah. And then from those substations to the site over off of Popper Heather Street area, they will be paying for the construction of brand new high voltage power lines between the two.
So from the filter street station and the electric station to the construction site.
Yeah, exactly. So substation expansions, it's a total of around, don't quote me on this, but I think it's around $30 million.
So they will do those improvements and then turn it over to the city.
We do not invest in that.
And you've already pointed out that their consumption is not going to cause a residential negative.
It should only generate revenue for the city in both the enterprise and general funds.
The budget proposes beginning the design work to replace the transformer at the Filbert substation and ordering the transformer. The transformer is past its useful service life. It doesn't mean it's not working and not functioning well. It's just past its useful service life. We need to start looking at getting it replaced.
This is a different transformer than the one at the data center.
Yeah, this is like, I said, those are, yeah, the data centers, they're using a different voltage than what our system uses, so it's. You price transformers anticipate to take a few years to be delivered. Cost of this project is estimated at about 3.5. We're budgeting 300,000 for design and about $700,000 for the initial deposit of the transformer. The plan is to borrow funds to complete the project. That's been the plan since we've been doing it. The funds will be borrowed when future payments on the transformer are needed. The debt service needed to repay the debt has already been worked into the rate model. So this, we won't be, looked at the rate model we're even currently using right now. There's debt service rejection built into it right now. So it's like, that will not cause the rates to go up either. And we did have $900,000 anticipated for the community solar project. This one might be the city substation, but we have not put it in the budget as the federal funding is not being received by the federal government. And they've actually pulled it, they've stopped it for now.
No, everything's still active. We're going through the NEPA process right now. There's no indication we're not moving to funds.
See, there's no indication that we're not.
Yeah, I think I said that wrong. There's every indication that we are still going to get the funds.
Even though it says solar on it.
Yeah, it's surprising, but I think it's because the funds were already obligated, which I think is making the difference. So far, we'll see.
We're those guys.
The quicker we can get it, the better.
Another potential project under review, but related to the Filbert substation, is the possibility of constructing an internal transmission line from the Oak Street station to the Filbert substation. We're experiencing more maintenance by BPA on its substation by the Forest Grove sub. There's our substation and there's BPA substation right there.
Or at the Filbert Street.
No, at Oak Street.
At Oak Street.
At Oak Street.
Oh, there's two substations.
Yeah, there's the BPA substation and then there's our
Are they
substation.
all in the same fence?
Yeah, this fence right down the middle. Yeah.
I
We
think
can go in between.
The BPA substation is nearing 60 years old, so they're starting to have to do more maintenance on it. When they do maintenance on it, we have to shut down the Oak Street substation. Transformers. If the maintenance is planned for a non-peak system, staff can manage the load with the two remaining transformers. But if the maintenance has to occur by BPA during peak usage time, staff has difficulty managing the load with just the two remaining transformers. Having to send too much power through the distribution lines is not a good thing for the lines. They start to sag and they get to, then they could actually do warm and melt and short out. So What's
The
it?
transformers actually have the capacity to handle the load. It's actually the circuits that run between the substations that backfeed through, and they're picking up too much load that puts us at risk.
And with more people using air conditioning, the non-peak usage times are getting, periods, windows are getting smaller every year.
So if I understand this correctly, then, once the data center gets in, we'll have two sets of lines coming out of each of those. One that goes to the data center and another set that goes between the two substations.
Not quite. The data center only will be running one transformer at a time. The other transformer and circuit being built is only for redundancy. It will not be being used unless it's needed. So they'll have the ability to transfer the full load between the two within seconds.
But there still needs to be the distribution, physical distribution lines from each of those two substations to the data center. With a separate transmission line between the two substations.
This transmission line really doesn't have anything to do with the data center.
Right, not the data center.
Yeah.
It's part of our.
We've been identifying a risk for a couple of years now, and it's getting to the point where it's starting to get uncontrollable under certain conditions. As an example, we had to do this last summer, and we had to start our work at midnight, take the substation down, and we had to have it back on by 6 a.m. before the industrial load started on 24th Avenue, or we may not be able to hold it on. We'd have to load shedding to start turning people on.
So as Keith said, the solution is to build an internal transmission line from the Filbert substation to the Oak Street substation. So transmission line, this internal transmission line would allow the city to power all 4 substations when the BPA shuts down its substation on Oak Street. We budgeted $213,000 for design in the upcoming biennium. We budgeted $135,000 to get the needed improvements at the substation to about 35% design. So we can prepare a cost estimate for that portion of the project. Line power staff will design the transmission lines internally, but then we'll have their plans reviewed and stamped by a professional engineer. We figured it costs around $75,000 for a professional engineer to review the plans of line power designs. We expect the transmission tie line to cost about $1.5 million for the city line. We do construction work on the line, the transmission lines themselves, the substation work.
The portions that are already contracted out, such as, we don't do concrete work, fence work and stuff. We'll do everything else with internal stuff.
The long-term internal plan is to have an internal transmission line that connects all 3 substations. This proposed line would be the second phase. You can remember we built a transmission line from Philbert to Thatcher, which was the first most critical phase of the project, which was completed in 2019. I got rid of a lot of the short power blips. That we experienced when the film transmission line kept shorting.
The line will need to go from Thatcher to Oak Street.
Eventually, it's the least critical portion of it. Yeah, eventually, that's been our long-term plan for a long time.
So other capital outlay items, you can see $350,000 for the construction of the modular storage building, which we're carrying over from last year. Started off this one. $300,000 to continue burying cables. $150,000 for upgrades to the overhead electric system. That's just general maintenance projects that they do on the overhead electric system. $150,000 for general substation improvements. This year they'll do some work at the substations. $30,000 for the remote metering system that we're installing, which includes some carryover funds from prior years. Some upgrades on hold while the city's upgrading its utility billing software to a new version, a new software version with the same vendor. $55,000 for ceiling mount fans and the vehicle enclosures that would bring stuff in. It's been raining. fans can help dry some of the stuff. Equipment. $22,000 for a pole storage bunker at Thatcher Substation. We buy this to put the poles in when we purchase them. The Light Power is waiting to install them. $350,000 carryover for a large bucket truck that's taking several years to complete. $20,000 for replacement vacuum excavator. $90,000 for replacement brush truck chipper, and then $395,000 for the replacement several pickup trucks and a flatbed dump truck.
These are metering right now.
We're doing single source remote metering. In other words, we still need to go into the field and be able to grab the reads. It's working well.
It drives through a neighborhood.
Right, it'll pick up the bulk of them, and so we have the city split up into quadrants. What this will allow us to do is that, because our meters are starting to phase out of service now, so it's the prime time. We are doing a hybrid system where we can continue utilizing the existing system and upgrade it at the same time with what's called a two-way AMI meter. And that allows us to actually exchange information with the meter remotely, and will enable us to gather just a tremendous amount of more information, loading information. That's a whole lot of other uses too. We are not planning that. They will have the capability. We can do remote disconnect. But that will be so.
Install one of these to shut the power down to the resident.
Yeah, for a few minutes, yeah. But let me just add one more thing also. So what this does, it allows the reading portion of it will just funnel right into our inner city fiber network, right into Christie at utility billing. So she'll be able to basically punch a button, it should pull in 4,000 meter reads instantly.
So labor then, I guess.
Oh, so yeah, because our meter reader just retired this last year. So we're working around it while this is still waiting, but we did not replace her.
Any other questions for Light Power?
Thanks, guys.
All right, next we'll move to Public Works Funds. Greg's coming up. Public Works Funds consists of sewer fund, water fund, surface water management, as we call it, the SWIM fund, and the related system development charge fund for those. Also, equipment fund. One expense common to I don't spend a lot of time detailing is the sewer fund, sewer SCC fund, SWIM fund, and sewer SCC fund are updates to the master plan for those funds. We've been talking about the master plans for a couple of years now. We've been carrying over those amounts from prior fiscal years while the city was waiting for Clean Water Services to finish the sewer flow modeling for the city. The engineering manager has said they expect to restart the master plan towards the end of 2025 when they expect to have the modeling data from Clean Water Services. That's still,
yep.
That's good, like, yep. Sewer public works employees are allocated to reflect the estimated time employees will spend in the sewer, water, street, and SWIM funds. For the fiscal year, public works employees charge their time to where they actually spend their time. So we
have time cards.
They record, they have work orders, they record their time for work orders and that. So we estimate, they estimate where they're going to spend their time at the beginning of the year, and then they record the actual. And so sometimes we have a budget adjustment towards the end of the year, but Because we changed how we budget, we're having fewer of those. Questions yet?
Oops, I'm now doing this. Oops, how do you do that?
First one, we'll talk about sewer fund. Clean Water Services is proposing a 4% increase to its rates on July 1st, 2025, that should say. Clean Water Service rates are about 86% of the total sewer revenue that we collect. We collect all the revenue and we turn about 86% over to Clean Water Services. We're likely to propose a 3% increase to our portion of the sewer rates as the fund balance is beginning to increase. So staff wants to lower the proposed increase while still having a smaller increase. So we continue to collect funds for capital projects that will probably come out of the sewer master plan when we do that update. Expenses, professional services includes $180,000 to migrate GIS data to the new utilities network, as the current software is no longer being supported by that vendor. This is an estimate. We hope the actual cost will be lower. Company that develops the software has recently developed some tools to potentially help the migration go faster, or go smoother. So we're hoping some of those tools will help lower the cost. Any questions on the sewer fund? There's not a whole lot going on in the sewer fund. It's a fairly static budget for them.
Sorry, Paul, you mentioned already, is Clean Water Services gonna be splitting their billing, or is that a separate matter?
Clean Water Services are talking about various things, or city managers are talking about various things, I think. And one of them is splitting it up and having Clean Water Services do their own billing. I think you're gonna see Clean Water Services are probably not too in favor of having to do their own billing for every customer they have in the county. But one thing they lose when the cities don't bill for them is it's hard to shut off a sewer if somebody doesn't pay. But if we're billing for water and electricity like we do here, it's much easier to shut off the electric and the water, and then the people will pay their whole bill. And if they're in the other cities, they'll shut off the water. But if Clean Water Services does not have a lot of collection teeth, or, it's not, can't threaten its customers with shutting it off. So I don't think Clean Water Service, they talked about in the past, they're really not in favor of collecting, having having to do their own billing themselves. Actually, the Swan Valley Water District actually bills the sewer customers out in the county for Clean Water Services.
I guess there's kind of two things, just to build upon that answer. There's that part of it, but the other part of it is it's not consistent amongst the municipalities that either do or do not bill an administrative fee that is paid by the Clean Water Services to the city for that service. It's just not consistent across the board. It's being done different in different cities. So there's kind of this effort to look at, okay, if we're going to do this, what's the fairest way to do it for all of the municipalities? Do you do it on a per capita basis? Do you not? I think that's part of it. The other part of it is making sure that the bill that the customer receives accurately reflects the charges and who's charging. Right? Because in some cases, it could be a Clean Water Services fee that we don't have any control over per se, that's being charged that gets assimilated to the city. So I think just trying to kind of make those issues, whether it's still billed by the city or whether it's billed by Clean Water Services, I think that's less of an issue than making sure that if the city is doing the billing, there's some remuneration associated with that administrative work, number one. And number two, that the bill clearly delineates what the fee is for and who it's for, if the city is billing for that entity.
Yeah, thanks for centering on the crux of the issue well, before the recent fiasco, the county commissioners seemed to feign not indifference, but they seem to feign that Clean Water Services was autonomous. So I'm curious, in light of their new enforcement, is that going to give more control over the rate increases that they're attributed to?
Well, Paul, correct me if I'm wrong, but the current rate increases are done by an IGA with all of the municipalities for both storm and sewer, is that correct?
The cities can set their own sewer and swim rates now, and the Clean Water Services sets its portions of the rates.
They
So-
said it, but then we bill for it.
And we bill for them. Clean Water Services is, they've been looking at their rates. They've been doing a 4% rate for several years now. Part of it's the cap, so they have capital needs that they're trying to cover themselves. And so some of that rate increase is for some, their operating expenses are going up. I'm talking about the trip to Hawaii, but,
But depending on how the bill is received, in some cases, it's an amalgamated cost
Yeah.
amount.
Yeah.
And that way, so like if Clean Water Services is 80% of that cost, it looks as though the city is raising that, and in fact, the city's not. That's not the city's charge. We may be raising our portion of that, which may be 20% of that. But it's because it's an amalgamated cost amount, it doesn't delineate where those funds are being paid to and who's raising it.
We have the capability to delineate on our.
we have,
I think
we have the capability. The question is, do we have the room? And, or do we have to, how small do we want to shrink the pond size to get
How to word it so it's understandable what this is.
Yeah, well, you'd go sewer, Clean Water Services portion, sewer, city portion, but then you'll also get calls from people, why am I paying two sewer bills? And just when our staff will spend a lot of time on the phone trying to explain, you're not paying two sewer bills, here's what the city portion is for, which is for the maintenance of the transmission lines up to the sewer mains, and then Clean Water Services takes over from there. You'll have to explain that. So it can be a mixed bag. You gotta consider, what the pros and the cons are of doing it either way.
I have a quick question. So I'm looking online at the sewer budget resources and expenditures. And for the fund balance available for 25-26, it's almost $6 million. And it looks like we don't spend any. And then the next year, the 26-27 funds available is 0. It looks like we spend almost $6 million.
With the two-year budget, we have the beginning cash balance in the first year of the biennium. Since it's a two-year budget that gets added together, it'll get totaled. That's one thing this doesn't do, but the final budget, when we do the adopted budget, we're getting the programming completed to do the two-year total. So you have the beginning cash at the beginning of the first year of the biennium, and then if you look at the end of the first year, there's no ending cash, but if you just look at the end of the second year, you'll see unappropriated ending fund balance. You'll see the ending fund balance at the end of the second year. So there's no beginning cash in the second year because it's all just one two-year budget.
It just looks weird because all the previous years, like.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. It's the switch to the biennium budget. It took,
It's a good catch. That kind of tripped me up
Well,
first.
it kind of looks weird when you look at all the other years.
it was weird getting my mind wrapped around it doing it. I'm used to cash here, beginning cash, ending cash, this ending cash, this beginning cash. I don't have that between the 2 years anymore.
But it kind of makes it look like we're gonna spend a bunch in the second year.
Yeah. If you have the total rate, you look at the 2 years together, which should be one of the schedules that we provided.
Yeah.
It would show it better, so. So no more questions on the sewer fund. We'll move to the sewer SDC fund. SDC charges, our revenues are based on the community development's projection for new homes in 2025-26. Clean Water Services is proposing increasing sewer from $7,009 to $7,139 per equivalent dwelling unit. The city retains 20% of the sewer SDC collected. We're the only city in the county that retains 20%. The other cities only retain 4% of it. But we made a deal with Clean Water Services. We're paying back these infiltration and these I&I projects, the inflow and infiltration, and we're paying debt service on 2 of them. And we told them we couldn't afford to pay the debt service on those if they took our SDCs down from 20% to 4%. And so they agreed to leave it at 20%, at least while we're paying off the debt on the inflow and infiltration projects. So that's actually helping to pay the debt service on those projects. And speaking of the inflow and infiltration, the last of the 3 projects designed to reduce that. The Clean Water Service has planned 3 projects for us. projected to start this coming fiscal year. The past two projects, the water service, we paid 50% of the total cost of the project. And I said we're repaying Clean Water Services for our share over a 10-year period. Clean Water Services received federal funding through a congressional directed spending request this year for a portion of the third INI, and now recently they would be using that for the city's portion. And so the city does not pay anything for the third INI project. So our services can actually do some nice things. Any questions on that? Water fund. Water fund is a healthy fund balance of $17.3 million, which has been helped over the years by watershed harvesting, which has helped many more revenue due to anticipated increases in timber prices. The volumes we harvest have remained within the harvest levels established by the water master plan, so we don't go outside the water master plan. Or the master plan when we're harvesting timber. We've been purposely building fund balance in anticipation of significant future capital projects, some of which have begun in the designing of a new 5 million gallon water storage tank up where the water treatment plant's located. We've been looking at water rates and system development charges. That study has been underway for a while. We had to back off on it for a while due to staffing, availability to get the work done. But we're going to be getting back on that after the budget's complete. And so we anticipate going to the council probably in September or October with the results of the study, with any rate increase probably planned for July 1 of 2026 from the study. In the meantime, we're proposing a 3% increase in water rates to continue accumulating funds for the upcoming large capital purchases and to follow council's preference for a series of smaller rate increases instead of a few large increases.
So how much will it cost to replace those?
The first reservoir, I think, first reservoir will be about 40 million gallons. We'll cover that in a minute. 43 now we're up to now, good. I gotta quit talking to Greg. Every time I talk to Greg, it goes up.
That's the capacity, not the cost.
What, 43?
The cost
That's
is
the cost.
43.
That's the cost.
That's the cost for the first tank,
We were gonna go for a drink.
What?
What's the
5 million gallons. Yeah. So currently, there's a 5 million gallon storage tank at the water treatment plant. It was built, the plant was constructed in the 1940s, and it's not seismically sufficient. Storage tank's actually two separate 2.5 million gallon tanks, but it's all, if you look at it, it looks like one structure, but it's two separate tanks. The water master plan is each of those tanks being replaced with a 5 million gallon storage tanks when we're done.
Those won't be co-joined, they'll be separate reservoirs.
Yes.
And so we'll rip out the old one, I guess.
Eventually.
We will, the way we're sequencing the work is for the first 5 million gallon tank, we'll take out one of the cells, one of the 2.5 million gallon cells of the existing, and leave the remaining 2.5 million gallon cell. So when we're done, we'll have a capacity of 7.5 million for a while until we build the next one. That's our plan.
End up with 10 million at some point.
Yes.
Part of the design is causing some headaches at the small site that they're trying to work on. We actually did purchase another acre off from that new development here to try to get more room to work with.
All the water that flows into that system is gravity fed from the watershed.
Most of it, well,
Less is from.
depending on the time of year, it'll come from our treatment plant. We do a lot of it. And then during the summer, we switch over to the joint water plant, which I think is that we don't pump a whole lot.
During summer months, yeah, during peak demand, we do quite a bit.
We use about, we end up getting about 500,000 gallons a day sometimes from our own watershed during the peak summer months. And then, which means we're getting 5.5 roughly gallons a day from joint water commission. We peak at around 6, or well over 6 some days.
All of that is processed by our one plant, and that's got sufficient capacity
For the watershed, yes, correct. The Joint Water Commission water is already processed water, so it's introduced into our distribution and storage system at 10th Avenue and Elm Street. There's a little turnout, that small building there that we can turn it on and turn it off from the water treatment plant. So the watershed does fine for about 8 to 9 months out of the year, depending on the water year, with our current demand and even a little bit of growth. But when summer hits, we get regulated off, meaning our water rights are curtailed. And so that's pretty common around here because of the 12th River. And so then we switch over and we have a little bit coming out of the watershed, but very little. And the bulk of it comes from Joint Water Commission.
What entity is it that sets the limit on how much we can draw from the water?
That is
Water
the,
master.
yeah, state water master.
Am I right to understand that this project does not help development in the urban reserve program?
The first phase, no, it won't. Second phase, it will promote and allow for growth of the larger part of it. There's still, in that area up above David Hill, there is a need for some very specific improvements to serve that area that are not related.
Otherwise, that'd be an entirely sizable investment.
Yes, it will be a sizable investment.
Moving the storage reservoir up there also.
We have one up there already.
You already do.
Yeah, a small 1 million gallon one, just off David Hill Road that would probably serve the area, but there will still need to be a booster pump because the elevations of the ground are higher than the storage tank. It would push that hill.
So the next 2-year budget, professional services includes $2 million in design fees to continue the design for the first new storage tank. Probably some of the infrastructure for the second phase. And the cost of tanks again have been increasing significantly. Like I said, one of it is due to the cost of the size of the site. To be able to store a lot of construction material, and I believe I've heard quoted once when they start the excavation there, they're taking out approximately 7,000 dump trucks with trailers of dirt that they're going to excavate. They'll have to store some of that or somewhere, and they have to bring some of it back. We're slowing down the design project while we wait to see if the federal government will really reinstate what they call the Building Resilient Infrastructure and Community Grant Program, or BRIC program, that the federal government canceled last month as the city was preparing to apply for a $27 million grant for the first storage tank. We don't know if they're going to reinstate it or they're going to come back with it in some new form. We need to hear what they're going to do, if anything. So that's BRIC grant came from FEMA, so there. So it's going to be, so we don't know what's going to happen there.
They're
How does that sign in right now?
Yeah, it's a mess, yeah. But I got to believe that they were gonna come back with some sort of program, because nationally, these are one of the few options for local governments to fund major pieces of critical infrastructure.
Because if we don't get the grant, we're gonna have to push forward with the storage tanks, which will mean borrowing the money instead of getting the grant to do it. So we'll probably want to use a rate model both ways. If we get some grant funds or we don't get some grant funds, and what would that service look like, and what would that do to the rates? Of the large projects going to start as construction to expand and remodel the public works office. The costs are $5.7 million right now. We're still working to lower the costs, but staff requested $6 million be budgeted for the rest of the projects. So it's gives them a little bit of cushion in there. Cost of the project are being paid by accumulated savings out of the water fund. So there's We will not be borrowing anything for this project, it'll be cash flow.
What's the fund balance looking like?
The water fund's got like 17.3 million in it. So this will take it down to around 11.5. All the fund balance has been going up regularly, so it probably might not take it down all that far. Similar to the sewer fund, we budgeted $108,000 to migrate the GIS data, new utilities network, and the program that's cost estimate. Like so, we're hoping some of those recent changes, the software program, software companies be able to help the version easier. Another long-term cost that we're looking at is the safety of dams project at Hag Lake by the Bureau of Reclamation. This is what they're talking about, rebuilding Hag Lake, just rebuilding the dams in place where it's at right now.
Yep.
It's not, they're not gonna raise it, they're just talking about rebuilding it, as the last I understood.
They're gonna fortify the existing.
To fortify the existing structure. This project will require a local match by the contract holders, of which we are one, in the lake. The amount has not been determined, but last we heard it may exceed 15 million. The federal government has federally financed the local matches in the past over a long-term period. For example, we're paying when Hag Lake was done in the 70s, we got a low interest contract from the federal government. We paid that over a 50-year period. So I'm not sure what the federal government may do this time, if anything, but we'll see as we progress through that project.
Just another confirm my understanding that we can't steal from Greg to pay for Henry's building. Have to look at the 5.7.
Yeah, that'd be, I'd have a hard time justifying the public works building with the building permit fund money. So the new building we built, the new part of City Hall that we built, we could justify because the building permit staff are located in there, and people that manage the building permit staff are located in there. Part of city administration is located in there. I'll let Jesse sign that check.
Can we move the building permit people to the police department?
This week you'll be here, next week you'll be here.
Get creative.
What if it's more armed together?
I get to be an interesting method of doing it.
Like that creativity. That's good.
Water SDC fund. Revenue is based again on the estimated housing we're gonna build. This was the water fund where the fund balance has been increasing as we're planning to fund some of these projects with the water SDC funds. Water ST rates are being reviewed as part of the water rate SDC study. Currently, we're budgeting $3.6 million to complete the construction of the energy intertie. The total cost of the project is about 3.6. It started this time this year, but we didn't know how much the construction costs were going to incur this year. So we just rebudgeted the whole 3.6 next year. So what we spend this year, we won't spend in the next biennium. So it will balance out.
But this SDC can certainly be used for the reservoirs, right?
It will be.
And anything we do up on David Hill, same thing.
Well, the SDC fund can be used for part of the reservoirs. Yeah, because right now we have,
For the part that's replacing existing.
no, for the new water. For the new water. So example, the first, say example, the first 5 million gallon tank, we can use SDC funds to pay for the 2.5 million gallons of that tank. It's gonna be new water. Because when we get that new 5 million gallon tank, we'll have 5 million there, but we'll still have the old 2.5 million gallons. So we can pay for the new water, but we can't pay to replace the storage tank for the existing one. That has to come out of water rates.
But it could pay
Water
for up on David Hill, right?
If it's increasing capacity, yes.
Yes.
It could be, yeah. And that intertie will allow for improved water flow rates, potential fires in the 24th Street area, and provide the city with an emergency connection to the Joint Water Commission. We're not intending to use it because if we use it on a regular basis, we'd have to lease that connection from the Water Commission, and we'd have to do some work to get some of the water back on a regular basis. up to our storage tanks. So we have $683,000 carried over from the city share projects, joint water commission treatment plant, of which we know 10 million gallons per day of treatment capacity.
Would we tie into the JWC water? Do we have any issues with pH balance, stuff like that?
That's actually a discussion point happening right now because one of the things that's happening is that the Willamette project will be coming online. And they are proposing a higher pH than what our water system is. And even what JWC generates for us. So it may cause some necessary improvements at the water treatment plant to accommodate the higher pH. And so those conversations are going on right now, and then who pays for what? Because my position is that City of Forest Grove, even though we're a partner in this, when they bring on the Willamette project, they're going to fundamentally change the system and how it behaves. And we're not asking for it. We're not a beneficiary of that action. So
That's a negative benefit.
it is kind of a negative benefit because there will be additional costs that we'll have to incur so that our distribution system works properly.
Residents will experience different pH levels in the summer than they do in the winter.
That's correct.
which is
They do now, but
Do they?
not to the extent that they will.
Not so much, but it's annoying when that happens.
Yeah, I can tell you the water coming out of the watershed is sweeter tasting and better tasting than stuff coming out of JWC. Yeah, it's just a little more sizzling because of the higher chlorine content. Yes.
Can you expand on a little bit more about pH and what sort of consequences of that for customers?
So what happens when you adjust pH, you get certain reactions within aged water systems where water sits for quite a bit of time in the distribution system. And so you get unwanted byproducts of reactions that occur in just basic water chemistry to the system and create some known carcinogens, things like that, that need to be monitored and dealt with. And you can handle that through proper treatment, but in order to do that, you'll need to do some improvements at the point of entry to deal with that and make the adjustments so that those unwanted byproducts are minimized.
If there's no other questions on water, we'll move to the surface water management fund. Again, we each set our own rates for the areas we have responsibility for. Clean Water Services is proposing a 4% increase in their rates. The city will propose matching the Clean Water Services in this instance. A lot of it is due to the increase in cost of the swim fund ourselves, as we're trying to operate our own swim fund, and the cost of it going up. Capital outlay for the next landing includes a carryover of $350,000 for construction and improvements of the less than 24 to address drainage and flooding issues. Swim SDC. Clean Water Services is proposing to increase the swim SDC from $678 to $691 per equivalent dwelling unit. They set the fee, but we retain all the funds that we collect for that.
Why do they get to set it if we keep it?
They're the controlling agency. They have the permits, so they set the fees. They can set those fees.
They don't actually process it, right? We handle the surface water, right?
Yeah, we build there's the quality facility and the
volume
detention.
facilities, and we take it into the river eventually. So I guess I'm still confused why the layer of government gets to set rates for us to do all the work.
That's a very good question.
Why
And
can't we
that's
just
been
tell
one
them,
of-
go take a hike, we're gonna take there,
Yeah,
in the nicest.
I'll just have my ears pinned back.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll tell us we can go above it if we want, but
Yeah.
they set the initial rate, because I think it's because they have the permits and they have everything.
Right.
They have everything else, so they're the recognized agency.
Permits from,
State.
State and feds.
feds.
We have to comply with the Clean Water Act, and there's a,
it just seems like a perfect example of a layer of government that doesn't need to exist here.
A lot of disagreement with us, so.
nope,
You know, there are some places where we do need to streamline our governmental issues. This is one of them.
Expenses, we got the money for the water master plan update for the swim portion. These are standard capital projects we budget every year. We're budgeting these amounts at each of the 2 years, and it's for, we have any water quantity improvements, water quality improvements. And then also for, if we're doing a storm sewer oversizing, which the developer does a project, they have to put a storm of a certain size in, and the city asks them to oversize it, we'll pay for the oversize.
So we always budget 75K for capacity and quality,
But rarely spend it.
but we don't spend it because our capacity and quality is adequate.
Or the developers build it.
So should we be, I mean, not collecting as much as we are?
It's hard not to collect when we don't set the fee.
This is hurting my head. This seems broken. We're collecting more than we need, and we can't change it. Another government entity is, can we tell them that we want them to change it for us? They set a lower one for us, we don't need this much. Because they could do that if they wanted to, couldn't they?
I mean, we've never asked them that question, so it's, and the other thing their Clean Water Services is starting to look at, if it's ever gonna get to be an issue, is some of the older parts, older areas in certain towns where they didn't really build storm systems when they built the initial, developments. They're talking about making cities, having cities go back through and put storm facilities, water.
relatively speaking, storm is a rather new phenomenon in the utility business. So a lot of the infrastructure that's being built or has been built is fairly new. This is for when things break. And we have whoops that we have to deal with. Water quality facilities are fairly new. Vegetation will eventually die off, and we'll have to replant and do that.
A lot of the subdivisions have these quality features that the developer had to put in. And the HOAs that are set up don't have a flaming clue what to do. I know because I'm the HOA president of ours, we have two of them.
Well, we help them out to the extent that we can. And that they're willing to participate.
So
We do
like,
inspections.
when invasive growth, blackberry vines and everything just take over the place, does the city help deal with that?
It depends. If it's a publicly maintained one, which we have a number of them throughout the city, then we just take care of them.
If they're in the
If they're an
subdivision,
HO, if they're in the subdivision, in some subdivisions, we do have responsibility. Others, we don't. If it's an HOA, then we work, if the HOA is active, and in a lot of cases, they're not. We work with that HOA to get things fixed. If it's a subdivision and there's no formed HOA, which is not uncommon, then we get to deal with the collective of the property owners. They're the ones obligated to fix it. That's how it's set up and dedicated. So, it's not an easy thing.
I'd love as an HOA person, I'd love to donate our water collection facility to you. If you'd be willing to take it out, like, what do I do with it?
Yeah. Well, that's part of the issue of being able to afford and have a revenue stream that can take on additional infrastructure, because they do have costs. As you being an HOA president, you know that.
Yes.
So,
So it's good to know that there is some money here in the budget that if somebody came to you and said, help.
Yep.
I need help with my water feature.
Yep.
We got some funding there.
we certainly can, yes.
Okay, so professional surface water management will go on the street. So we'll go on the street. Not
Test now.
There you go.
Before we move on away from like stormwater and sewer treatment and all that, can I ask you real quick, because we were kind of joking about levels of government. You don't really want to deal with MS4 permitting and hire a bunch of scientists and deal
Oh,
with
I've
all
been
that.
through the whole MS4 permit process in another state. I helped write the original general permit for the state. And no, I want really nothing to do with it.
So it's okay that, we have a partner who actually has a whole
Right.
bunch
So
of
there is some
scientists,
value there.
engineers,
Oh, yeah.
there's- Right,
Yeah,
okay.
there's value.
Yeah, if Clean Water Services is not the managing partner of the MS4, then each municipality will have their own MS4 permit, and they have to deal with the state, and EPA.
No, it costs a lot of money.
A lot of money.
It
A
is.
ton of money. And then I have a real other quick, you mentioned some I&I projects.
Yes.
And I wanted to just real quick, I'm sorry I didn't think about it before, but I was thinking a little bit about it now. You said that was the last of 3, and I wanted to know if that was based on, a big system-wide assessment that had happened some years ago, whether we might maybe anticipate that, there's maybe some other older aging infrastructure that's gonna have to be dealt with at some point. Or has the city of Forest Grove actually completed like a whole system-wide upgrade? And we're
Well,
pretty good.
Clean Water Services does the evaluation, since they are the recipient of the I&I.
Right, they're treating all the water.
They're
that
treating
is
storm
not
water.
supposed to be there, but it's
Right,
getting
exactly.
through the system.
Exactly. So it's in their best interest, and they did do a system-wide analysis. I don't know how great it was, but they did do one. And we have been partners with them in determining which breaches get repaired and what don't. This third phase, it's kind of a, for lack of a better term, it's a freebie. We've got approximately 4,000 lineal feet of pipe for the budget to pipe burst and replace. And we've worked with Clean Water Services to select those that are the worst ones.
Okay,
So
there's
we get
still-
the most bang for our buck.
okay, but there still might be some system.
There always is going to be. This collection system, there are parts of it that are 100 years old.
Gotcha, that's my question. Thank you.
So that stuff doesn't last all that long.
Right. Appreciate it.
A street fund, the primary sources of revenue of the state and county gas taxes and county vehicle registration tax. These revenue for the next spending also includes $1.4 million for a safe routes to school grant. We were successful getting an $850,000 congressional direct spending for TV highway safety improvements. ODOT is contributing additional funds to the project. And they're going to lead the project and the city signed an agreement with ODOT to program and constructs the project, which is now part of the fiscal year 26-28 state transportation improvement plan. Think it is?
Yep.
And a traffic light at you and Adair as part of the project. State's actually going to receive the $850,000. The city won't receive it as part of their management of the project. So. We're budgeting $1.2 million in each of the years for street overlays and ADA curb ramps on local streets that are either not a collector or arterial. those curb ramps for the collectors and arterials can be funded by TDT, not TIF, TIF's gone.
This is separate from the metro highway.
Yeah,
Yeah,
doesn't have anything. to do
this,
with it.
this is just the annual street overlays that we do.
Right.
Comes before.
Yeah.
So did they, I'm just curious how the designs intersect like that, the curves, do they have to align with the design for a transit stop or are those offset enough?
Usually speaking, the transit stop doesn't go into the radius return of an intersection. And that's what we're focusing on in terms of replacement.
that'll
So
be-
the two are somewhat independent, but they will be looked at if we have additional information to work on.
Just to piggyback, I brought some similar concerns when I was on that committee, that TBI was steering committee, and Metro and TriMet said like, oh, I said, Forest Grove's moving forward, we have these safety concerns, and we need, we're trying to get funding in all these different mechanisms, and we're moving forward with it, it'd be nice if we could align or not, I was very blunt, I was like, I don't want you ripping out sidewalk that we spent millions of dollars to. And they said they would work with what we're doing, so I was also like, if we do something unique, can that like be our match, right, or can that play for our match? It's been, I don't know, you've been on it for a few months, but basically the message I got was that they don't really know how that will work with our matching funds, and that they would work with the safety improvements we have, if it went against that one.
Well, having been at that bus stop, it's literally at the corner.
Yeah. It's not obvious. Is that what you're
No, you,
Oh, wait, you, okay, yeah, so you right across from 7-Eleven by Dory Ford, yeah.
right, so they would have to like actually move offset the bus stop back or something. Well, I guess the maps that Metro has doesn't give that precise.
No.
That's because there hasn't been enough design done. A lot of this is just over high level conceptual design until you get down to the nitty gritty and start figuring out all the geometrics.
So they gotta face back. I got that from our.
That's really wow. Just frustrating when you're like, it's kind of like this, we have the same goal of like safety and through public transportation, and then you feel like it's just, we can't merge, we can't marry the two together, but hopefully it will at the end, I don't know.
Could we usually spend our 1.2 million each year on overlays and curb ramps?
Oh, yeah.
Every year.
Depending on our bid price, we will adjust upward or downward, number of road stations.
Safe Routes to School grant, the Mountain View Lane Highway project. And to tweak the totals on here because it's, you gotta check the budgets tomorrow and how it's entered in. So actually $1.6 million project, $1.4 million in funding from the grant, and $2.2 million from the city match from TDT.
No,
It's not.
no, that is coming from Mystic.
That's kind of a mistake.
2.2 million?
Yep.
So none of it's ours.
Yeah.
None
So
of it's ours. But right now.
All right. Okay,
That's awesome.
so TDT. This is a county tax, it's a successor to the traffic impact fee. Based on, TDT road is based on, for us, on single family residences. We don't, the county is increasing the TDT by 8.32% on July 1st, 2025, from $10,599 to $11,478 for a single family house. So this is the biggest fee. And again, it includes there's no match from this TDT. It's actually a STIP, part of the STIP money from the state. So we got to get that corrected. There's $500,000 in each year for curb ramp improvements as part of street overlay projects, intersections, and the intersections that will receive signalization improvement. arterial and Collector Street curb ramp improvements can be funded by TDT funds since they're an allowable expense for that. We have $300,000 in funding for improvements to the highway, Maple Street, Fern Hill Road, Highway 47 project, which is expected to be built by Washington County.
Is that a final, price for the Maple TV Highway and Fern Hill? intersection?
It's fully funded right now.
And do we have an estimated start date on that?
It's highly dependent and solely dependent on
The railroad?
Bonneville Power's willingness to move a pole that's sitting right in the terminal.
So,
One pole.
One pole and it takes 3 years, but they're expediting and hope to have it done in a year and a half.
so it's not gonna happen for summer?
And if Keith was in the room, he could tell you he could have it done in 2 weeks.
No.
Where is Keith?
But BPA will not let him move the pole.
How about we move it and then get forgiveness later?
This is
So it's- There's been some conversation about whether portions of that project could move forward, and if so, if it could put DPA in kind of a pinch to have to move the pole.
Yeah.
But I don't know that any kind of staging or design shifts have been done to try and do that. I think that conversation is kind of happening though. Because, and also,
Can I
the
go? meet with
DPA
them?
pole is very, very close, if not in the railroad right away, which adds another slightly kind of complicated thing.
Yeah, well, I'd like to talk with you all further about this.
Yeah.
It's trouble when you actually get into, it. You just move the pole and then say, oops.
Oh, we've never talked about that, have we, Keith?
I'm Sunday only.
Oh, that was your pole, sorry.
You can go visit Keith on the weekends. No.
We actually offered to buy the pole.
Oh.
So we moved it. They want to sell it to us. They said it would take 4 years to.
I gotta talk to
Keith,
you.
just do it. In 4 years, they'll say, okay, we're ready to sell.
It's just crazy because it's such like it's a huge safety issue.
Yeah.
Like, This whole intersection, you have the funding, you have everything to do it. This
You
is like,
guys know what
this
to
is
do.
more annoying to me than.
And Mayor, I think one of the issues that this delay is causing is escalation in project costs.
Right.
It keeps going up. That's not gonna ever go back down.
Well, okay, I said I would talk to you about this later, but I'm kind of curious if we end up, because that was part of the allocation funding package with this tip, right? So if we can't do the project, is there any potential, possibility that WCCC or the county says, hey, we're gonna fund a different project in District 4, and then it bumps us off the list? I'm just like, now I'm like doom and gloom. I'm very concerned that if
Think
we don't, I did not meditate long enough this morning, and furthermore, I didn't have time to do a workout, so like, there's no.
Well, this project is really important to the city and its residents. It's a very dangerous, high accident location.
Yeah.
And it needs to be addressed.
But I guess I could say, from previous mistake cycles, if the project did not get built within that cycle, money did not get necessarily reallocated to the project. It just got delayed, but the money stayed there and only future monies were allocated to future projects. So the past precedents would indicate that it's safe,
Just on pause.
that the money is safe, that it's on
That's
pause.
gonna cost $2 million more.
I do think there may be a conversation from a political standpoint about whether pressure can be brought on BPA to try and address this in a more expedited
For
manner
sure.
than the time frame that we're talking about.
Yes.
Staff has brought it up, staff has talked to BPA, Keith has offered alternatives to buy it. We have joked about, things that would never occur, but we've talked about every type of solution that we can to try and kind of expedite this. And I think it's gonna kind of come down to, how do you get some pressure on BPA to put this up the priority list to get it moved? I think that's probably what it really
How
comes
far
down
does
to.
it have to move? About 10 feet.
They wouldn't even notice.
We'll talk about this later.
Keith, I think that's pretty accurate, right? So.
Yeah, we just had another meeting a couple of months or so. I think getting it done in 26 will be probably not happen. Probably 27.
And that's just gonna bump costs up even higher. Because of delays.
They've been at it for 3 years and having to assign a project manager.
We're gonna stick Doge on it, they don't get move on.
All right, we'll do one more fund. I think
And we'll take a break.
Take a break. This will be Greg's last fund. Revenue, this is equipment fund. So revenue is principally from rental charges to all funds except fire department and light power department to purchase their own vehicles. Replacement funding for police vehicles comes from the capital excise tax fund. Over the next biennium, we're gonna be replacing following vehicles. Replacing a vehicle for building official. You're gonna see public works, you're gonna look at that, you're gonna see a lot of dollars there. The next one down. And the first two line items, about 950,000, they have been carried over to prior years while we've been waiting for that equipment to get built. Larger dump truck for the public works. Sign truck, another combo cleaner or a factor truck, I don't think it's a factor truck. And then 320,000 for a large truck for patching. Police vehicles, $225,000 for Ford Explorer patrol vehicles. Try to buy the hybrid version, but they're very difficult to get. Last time we tried to order one, we couldn't even get a construction date on it, so we ended up having to buy one or two gas Explorers because we couldn't wait any longer to replace those police vehicles. Parks Department, 3 pickup trucks and a 0-turn mower. The bottom truck is replacing an old truck, one of their hand-me-down trucks they got from another department, so budget $55,000 for another new truck from them. And the remaining ARPA money, we bought the Parks Department a F-150 Lightning with some of the remaining ARPAs at the end of what?
The Bobcat hauler.
Yeah, well, it actually, so.
Get these through Doherty or I'm sure.
We get them, there's a state list and there's Doherty. We actually buy a lot of stuff from Doherty. We will buy it from Doherty as long as they're fairly close to the state price. We provide them locally when we can. So we get quite a few of the Fords that we get from Doherty. Some we don't because you can't get those vehicles, but if we can get them from Doherty and Doherty will come close to the state price, we'll buy from Doherty. Following year, it's gonna look boring compared to this next year. Transit van for building inspector, public works and forklift, tractor, Ford Explorer for administrative staff, and then a new Ford Explorer patrol vehicle. Regarding all that money on the public works there, you see we build the replacement money over time. So every couple of years, every 5 or so years, we do hit one large year where there's a bunch of stuff getting replaced for a lot of dollars. But we built up the cash to do it, so it's not like we're short on the cash to do it. We fund the replacement, so when the vehicles are getting ready to be replaced, or ready to be replaced, we have the funding built up for them. And we'll stop there and take a break.
Well, wait, can
No, any questions?
Well, can we actually is it okay with the chair and the committee if we just push forward another 10 minutes? And then take a break about 5 minutes before 8 because election results are at 8 and I will be distracted looking at that. I'm just being very transparent on
No,
this.
that's a good idea.
Okay.
Yeah,
Press on.
we'll press on.
10 more minutes. and we'll break.
Oh, now we get to much. This is my stuff anyway. Thanks, Rick.
Yep.
Thanks, Rick.
Thank you, Greg.
Thank you.
All right. Information Systems Fund. Similar to the Equipment Fund, departments are charged based on, we charge a rent charge for the equipment. IS Fund purchases all the equipment centrally and then distributes it out to the department. So again, we're charging them so when their computers are ready to be replaced or whatever the hardware is, we have the funds built up to do it. And we also charge for common software like Office 365 through the Information Systems Fund. Specialty software used by a department is charged to the department, i.e. I pay the software maintenance charges on the accounting software, the utility billing software, GIS, that's charged through my department. IT staff wages and benefits and the cost of the IT consulting firm who will be hired to manage the city's information system are expensed in the administrative services department. Due to staffing issues over the past few years, replacement of computer equipment has fallen behind. We've been very low on staff, particularly about 2 years ago. I had just the IT manager for a year doing everything, and we were also doing two, and we moved City Hall twice during that year. One was just her, so. Yeah, that's why she retired.
Yeah.
We wore the poor person out. So we're planning on how to, and we're currently replacing the 18-year-old UPS for the main server room.
Is that what the phone system up?
No, actually, no, what took the phone system out is they had issues and they couldn't move over to the new UPS, so they kept the old one, running. But there wasn't communication to the electrician and my facilities guy that it didn't get done. And they were scheduled to come in Monday morning at 8 o'clock and demolish and demo the old one. Well, of course, we were still using the old one when they came to demo it, so it caused problems. So we've had discussions with contractor and with IT staff about, hey, if this doesn't work next time, make sure you inform. Actually, what I told them is do not schedule the demolition until you know you switched over to the new system, then schedule the demolition, so we don't have this screw up again.
That was a communication failure.
Yep. It was
That caused another communication failure.
a self-inflicted wound, as I call it. Yeah, we weren't happy about that. Next year, we're budgeting to replace the police and fire mobile data terminals. They're getting very old. Police, some of them are suffering the blue screen of death frequently, so we have the new ones on order. And we're gonna be buying lots of desktops and laptops to address the coming Windows 11 deadline, and also to replace desktops and laptops that are well past their replacement date, so.
Hey, Paul, with the, I know we were trying to get a IT manager, I think it was, and weren't able to.
We're talking about, yeah, we decided actually, we're talking about it, we're actually gonna look at contracting out the upper level management services and the maintenance and the servers, all the high level hardware, the servers, the firewalls, the switches and those things. We contracted out, and we think it's gonna be cheaper for us for us actually to contract it out.
Does that contract include, on-site repairs and desktop also, or just,
We're gonna keep the everyday desktop
right?
stuff will
Okay.
stay here, all of the everyday type items of such of that nature, because all the consultants we talked to said, do not ask us
Right.
to, do not contract with us for the desktop maintenance. It will cost you more for us to do it than it will for you to do it. So we're gonna be looking at contracting out the, basically the stuff in the server room, the switches and them around the city and management of the planning.
And what was the quote from the contractor
About $213,000. So,
annually?
what?
Annually,
Yes.
okay. And then what was the title and the quote offer for manager? Should we have found one if that was?
If we'd done an IT manager, that position would have been around $200,000, all in with salary benefits.
Okay.
But with the salary benefits we pay, the IT managers tend anymore, not staying long, so.
Right, okay. All right, thanks.
Phone systems beginning to age and we've been having issues with it, so we're looking at our phone switches in most buildings are several years past their useful life of around 14 years. We are gonna work with the IT management firm to develop a plan to replace the phone system. We think we can do it for a lot less than what we originally estimated. We may even look at going to Teams phones as an option as part of the Office 365 that we're on. Several pieces of the hardware for the main server are due for replacement. But prior to replacing any of the on-site server hardware, staff and the IT management firm are going to review the options for moving potentially some of it to the cloud services and the cost of doing that, plus the pros and cons of doing that. There's pros and cons of which type of cloud system you go to, if you go to one, and also versus staying in-house, what are the costs of keeping it internally versus taking it off premise. So GIS activities continued. If you remember last year, we funded 3 areas of forest for the GIS activities. One of them was the UN migration for Light Powers data. Light Powers almost completed that UN migration, and they're working with the consultant to finalize apps so the converted GIS data can be used in the field. I think Light Power is very happy with the product and the results that they're getting. So that's one of the good success stories we've had with the GIS moving forward. Public Works has been cleaning up its data, so its UN migration can begin. We've moved the G-Cities GIS system out onto the cloud, and it's being actively managed and updated on a regular basis by our consultant. And staff from GIS management consultant have been discussing next steps to keep the system moving forward. More information available to the public is one of the items being discussed. That's one of the things the management consultant would like to do, is start making the system more available to more people as we move forward. And so that's even one of the consultant's goals. And so we're talking about, how we get there and how we keep it going. Any questions on the IS fund? Risk management fund, we can get this one done first. Stop. This is where we account for the property liability insurance plus the workers' compensation insurance citywide. We charge the departments for their prorated share of the workers' comp and for the property liability insurance. And lately, we've also been receiving for several years now dividends from SAFE. When SAFE financial performance permits dividends to be paid, the dividends go in here, and they're used to help offset increases to SAFE premiums. So material and services changes, we've already talked about the property liability a couple times. Insurance going up, property insurance by 9%, general liability by 6%, automobile liability, physical damage premium by 6% and 9% respectively. Next in 25-26, our insurance agents expecting those to decline by about 1% for the second year of the biennium. Workers' comp insurance is expected to increase by an average of 10% next year, but the charges to the departments will remain the same, as last year's SAFE dividend will be used to offset the increase. So I'm trying to keep the workers' compensation premiums flat, constant for the departments, even though the workers' compensation premium may go up and down. We have some money in this fund for capital outlay. We're meaning to implement our employee self-serve module for human resources and payroll, and that will continue this year after being delayed to staffing the workload. That will enable employees, like they fill out address changes or electronic time sheets or electronic leave requests, and we'll just take a lot of the paper away that we still push for HR. The goal is to that's our goal, is to put an electronic system for approval, so it's quicker and things don't get lost in the shuffle. And we've got a very good balance, reserve balance, particularly on the workers' compensation side. We've done this in prior years when we've had pretty good balances. We're budgeting a $40,000 transfer to the general fund, and each is proposed in each year of the biennial budget. This still will leave sufficient risk management fund balance in the workers' comp reserve area to avoid future workers' comp premium increases for the next several years. Part of the reason we take it to just the general fund is we'll take it to the general fund, and then we'll use it to not allocate some of the overhead expenses out to the other departments, so that way they're getting credit for some of that money that goes back into the general fund. That's risk management. If there's any questions, we'll take.
Stop there. Let's take a 10-minute break.
The next.
Is there a trail?
$100,000 that we're gonna transfer the money to the truck.
back.
We're back.
All right,
TLT.
okay, city's transient lodging tax fund, we've been charged charging that since January 1st, 2018, on the council pretty 2.5% citywide TLT. Fiscal year 25-27 revenue is projected to be consistent with fiscal year 24-25, probably twice as high, but the level. Staff's not seeing growth in the TLT revenue. Hotel rooms and vacancy rates have remained flat, so it's, we anticipate about 140,000 for this year. We're anticipating about $280,000 for the next 2 years. By council resolution, they adopted net annual revenues of the transient lodging tax fund are spent as follows: 40% on tourism marketing, 40% on tourism event sponsorship, 20% on capital programs, of which 50% is dedicated to tourism capital projects, and the other 50% is dedicated to fixed art installations managed by the Public Arts Commission. The city keeps 20,000 of TLT funds to fund part of the economic development program coordinator salary, and 7.5% of the funds for other administrative overhead. The city had about $140,000 in accumulated capital outlay that had accumulated over the years since it started. That money is currently being spent. That money is being spent on the Glow Up project in the central downtown area.
With the trees being replaced and new grates and all that stuff.
Actually, we're not putting new grates in.
Construct, flexible.
And yeah, it's all part of the project. During the current biennium, there'll be approximately $189,000 in undesignated funds that have not been spent in prior years. These funds have accumulated again from unspent TLT revenue over the past fiscal years. This year, we budgeted to spend all the TLT that we brought in, so we didn't increase the undesignated money.
It'll still be there with 89.
Yeah. But once that 189, we start spending it, it is gone. It's not money unless you start spending less than you're bringing in, you'll have to put more back in.
It's a one-time expenditure.
Yeah, it's one-time expenditure kind of deal. Current one-year tourism marketing contract is concluding, and staff preparing a scope of service as part of a request for quotes that will put out for the next tourism marketing contract. Funds are also budgeted to continue the popular tourism event sponsorship program. And at a January 27th, 2025 work session, the council reached consensus to do two things. One, consider raising the TLT from 2.5% to 3%. At the current level of rate of revenue, that would raise approximately $28,000 per year. And two, hold another work session after the assessment of the Forest Grove Main Street program being performed by the Oregon State Main Street program is complete. So upon receipt of that assessment, staff will schedule a work session soon thereafter. The council will discuss how the Main Street program moves forward and how the city may participate. Are there any questions for staff first? What we talked about?
We do that. Any questions?
All right, thank you for your time, everybody. I wanted to just clarify a few things before I skim over the presentation. You should all have received a PowerPoint presentation. As I'm speaking as a counselor tonight, but also as someone with experience and background deeply engaged in the downtown revitalization. Studying Main Street models, leading surveys, meetings with businesses and building owners, and connecting with state and national experts. I know there are different opinions about Main Street programs and strategies because there's variation. But what I'll be demonstrating tonight is based on the research done, based on the lessons learned from other organizations, and is as factual as it can be based on that information. I'm hoping that we can look at this in a lens that benefits the community. I know in our 2040 and the surveys that the city did, as well as what the City Club did, and I'll get into that. One of the the bright and shiny request was revitalization downtown, community things, more events, places for kids to play, more restaurants and shops. So this will then lead into that. And I do want to confirm and let everybody know that I'm the president, I'm on the board of the city club. And every time there's a vote for any monies, I recuse myself, even though I'm not required to, because there's no conflict of interest in the situation. But I still recuse myself. So I will be doing that when it comes time. But I also want to be clear, because I know rumors get out there, conversations happen. There has never been a conflict of interest. This isn't a conflict of interest, an ethics violation, abuse of power, any sort of impropriety. So I wanted to just make people feel comfortable with the fact that that has all been researched and things are very separate and transparent. So you all received this, and I think Jamie has some handouts too to just give further information. I'm not going to read all of this, but it is just kind of gives you a highlight of what the city club is, and they're a nonprofit here in town, what the Main Street program is, the benefits of the Main Street program and how it revitalizes the city. And you'll see on the presentation too, not actual befores and afters, obviously, but hypotheticals. This is actual. This is an example of the flavor of actual revitalization that has been done in other cities. So this isn't a dream. This is, or an unreachable dream, that is. This is something that's been attained by other cities. I do also want to call out that an investment in the downtown through the Main Street program, the Main Street America, based on their research, $18 is returned to the district for every $1 invested. So these are real factual numbers, and that's an incredible amount of benefit. So there's a request here for budget. In the documents that Jamie just handed out, there is a budget lined out with just a generalization, as well as the comments from business owners and a resident who happens to live in the downtown area. So take a look at it and ask me any questions that you have.
Summarize what the financial ask is that you'd like to have happen.
Yes. So what they would like is what's standard for a long-term budget, but the average budget for a Main Street program for a city of our size is approximately $150,000 a year. And based on what that support is, based on how much the city gives, that is in direct connection with how successful the downtown is. So what they're requesting is 50% of what the average budget would be. It still wouldn't reach this organization's, average budget of $150,000, but they're asking for 50% of that, which is not standard. That's high. But the reason for that is because we've been doing this for a year here in the city. The city's been a part of the Main Street program, and there's a need to jumpstart the program. So having that extra funding the first couple years even will help bump that forward. I'd just like to remind everyone that a few businesses have closed recently. There's one that just announced their closure coming up here. So we're losing another business. And these are all connected to lack of what's on the sidewalk.
So 75K 2 years in this 2-year budget cycle.
This would be, the thought is 50% is high for this. But the thought is if they could get 50% the first 2 years and then bump down to what's average, that would help it would help catapult the beginnings of the work they're doing.
Okay, so 2 years at 50%, and then out years, we expect to be at a lower percent.
Correct. 25 to 30% is an average amount that cities give. And the reason why I'm talking about it during TLT is because TLT and urban renewal funds are the two top buckets that the city uses. The next is the general fund and then EID funds, which nobody likes.
And so with so City Club would like to receive this grant. Is it a grant you're talking about? or-
It would be a budget funding. I'm sure there would be a contract that would be written, because this is a contract for sort of services, although the city is a partner in this. It's a partnership program. And so the city, Pacific University, Adelantes, there's different groups that are partners. So I'm not sure how that would be worded or what the contract would look like.
And who administers the funds, assuming the city made its contribution? Which entity decides how the funds get spent?
The City Club is the administrator of the Main Street program and has signed the contract with the state. And so the City Club would be the administrator of those funds. It would be funding allocation to the City Club's Main Street program. The city partners, the partner being the city, to move forward with revitalization. Keeping in mind too, that the structure of the Main Street program has a board of partners. They are all making the decisions on what to spend the money on, what projects there should be,
So
and
this
that
is
partnership
specific
includes
to
the city.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a group that as a supervisory board function to the City Club to advise on how the Main Street program funds should be spent.
Correct. And the
And the
city
main-
is one of those partners that
The
would
City
make that
Club
decision.
actually writes the checks from the funds that they receive from the city
Correct.
and Pacific and whatever other sources.
Right, yeah, there's other money comes in from sponsorships, memberships, other stuff.
And these funds, the way they get, the things that they're used towards, is it marketing related activities?
Yes, that's
mostly?
actually, there is a budget highlighted in here. Personnel and administration, program operations like office supplies, training, promotion and events, so marketing campaigns, event planning and outreach, design and beautification. One of the big things that we're missing is the matching grants for this organization. You can't get a grant because so many of them are a matching grant. You have to have those funds, and you also have to have a designer who you have to pay to do that. So once they have this going, it starts to build on itself. Even though that funding is always, that partnership funding is always necessary. It's still, it gets its traction. And then the better the downtown does, because it starts to do a ripple effect, then the better this program will do also.
So.
Can I give like an update to where we are like on the council process? So I think a year, this is for like the benefit of the budget committee members that are not on the council. So I think like 2 years ago, there was interest in Main Street program. So we had two entities, two nonprofits who were interested in administering that. That was the Chamber of Commerce and the City Club. The EDC recommended the chamber. City Club said that they didn't get enough information. So there was conversation between those organizations. It was the direction to do an MOU between the city, the chamber, and City Club. That has not happened. My understanding is there's like been some differences in agreement. So anyways, that's kind of where that was, but the city did end up, oh, so wait, I need to reverse a little bit. The city said, okay, we will write a letter to the Main Street program. The council decided to get consensus for its city club with this MOU to have happened. So that's what the city has, like, that resolution said that. So then we've been talking about it. It's one of our goals for downtown, strategic planning downtown. I do want to say we have invested money in the downtown through our URA with the building improvement grants, the storefront improvement, and the current downtown glow up. The consensus at as we had a work session on TLT funds in January, and the consensus of the council at that point, the Main Street program from the state that the city club would partner with or be an affiliate with, did a state assessment. So the council said, hey, let's get the state assessment back, because I believe, you know, I don't want to speak for the whole consensus, but the consensus was, let's get this back from the state, and then let's figure out what direction, what the report said, because there's different areas that a Main Street program can work with it, right? Are you gonna work in like beautification? Are you gonna work in marketing? So, you know, I appreciate this budget outline, but at this point, the council has not seen like what the action plan is from the city club partnered with that assessment. So there is a plan to do a work session, to have a work session, to meet and do a joint work session, but funding hasn't, that funding for me personally, that funding was gonna, the discussion, like, I'm okay talking about TLT and increasing dollars, but without having that assessment report and knowing what the plan is and the outcomes and how the funding is tied to outcomes, at this point, I'm not super comfortable with saying like, hey, for sure, we're gonna give it to City Club right now. What I would be okay with is saying, hey, we're gonna increase the TLT up 0.5% for economic or downtown revitalization. And that may come after we do the work session, after we see the report, after we have a plan like that. But it gives the council some, and the city some like flexibility, because what if the state assessment comes back and says, hey, you really just need someone that's gonna be like, oh, you know, making sure the downtown's clean, doing painting, like flowers, like this and that. And the city decides to hire someone from city staff, or what if we decide to increase someone's workload, or what if we decide to go with city club like that? We have a lot more flexibility in, we still are putting it towards downtown and tourism and economic development. But for me, I would like to see the state assessment and like an actual plan of, we're gonna focus on this part of the downtown.
Process check. How much more do we have to cover tonight? We've got 30 minutes. And what do we absolutely need to get done?
So we need to get through several more funds tonight. About 6 or 7 looks like.
I would suggest we send this, because this wasn't on the agenda. I understand it was submitted as a public comment. I'm not understanding why it's suddenly a presentation when it wasn't even directed to be a line item. So that's not, I'm just a process check that we're doing something out of the process, and we all want to get out here at 9 o'clock. So I want to get through the budget, what we've actually set out to do.
So this, I think, is pretty highly relevant to the TLT, which is why I urged Donna to cover it. I think we do not need to reach a decision tonight at the budget committee, but I guess I'd like to understand that we have unappropriated funds in the TLT that could be used for this purpose if the council decided to use them for that purpose, correct? And
Correct.
so I don't think that the budget committee needs to make a decision or a recommendation tonight on that merit, because the work session's planned, as the mayor has indicated. So my sense, unless Donna sees it differently right now, is that this has been very helpful information for us to have. are funds that could be used for this purpose, and there's additional consideration that we have to get the council. How does that work for you?
It doesn't work,
Okay,
and I'll let you know why. So one thing, this is perfectly appropriate to bring it to council tonight. It's TLT funded budget season. At the retreat, we talked about discussing it at budget, which is very clear. As far as the work session, I took some notes here. So the assessment is done by the state, and they have, basically, they go through a similar process that the 2040 plan went through. And you'll see the community survey findings. It's just kind of an overview of that survey. And the assessment itself is a tool for the Main Street program administrator to use. Again, along with the city as a partner. This is how that works. This is not a prerequisite for funding. And it provides recommendations and directions based on the information they have received. So just because this assessment says X, Y, and Z, doesn't necessarily mean that that is what the program decides to do. And again, I want to repeat, including the city that's involved.
so John, what do you want the budget committee to do tonight? Is there a decision you're looking for?
I am proposing that we grant the city club funds for the Main Street program, funds that are logical for what the city wants to do, so that they can follow up and be supportive of the downtown, which the community has been asking for in the 2040 plan and in the Main Street
You
survey.
would like a line item to show up in the budget?
Yes, and for them to, the city, us, to commit to the Main Street program, which is what the city requested to begin with.
So here's what I would like to do. I would like to table this for tonight, but schedule it on the agenda for our third meeting. And in between now and then, ask you to consult with staff to see if they have any input on.
Sure.
I want to ask a simple request.
Go ahead.
So this seems wildly out of order because there was a letter written by Donna as the city councilor to the council that did not make it back. The response by the city sent to the council that did not make it back. Those are just as relevant as this presentation to the. And we still haven't seen the assessment. Have you received the assessment?
No, Sherry's out on medical leave. I think she's returning this week.
So I think we need all that information available to the entire committee. Plus, we need it in advance.
Can that be
To
made
have this
available?
given to us in hard copy is not.
Right, so we have another meeting scheduled in a week. Is there time to get that information out?
Possibly, yeah.
I would state that out of process, like, I haven't heard a motion to do that. And so, out of like Robert's rules or like the meeting order, there needs to be a motion to do what you're asking to have happen. And then a
So far,
second, and then a consensus.
I agree.
Okay.
What I'm trying to do right now is understand as part of the TLD discussion, that we can move to a motion and action. I want to make sure it addresses what the needs are. Sounds like that would be unique. So we have a motion to move this discussion into next week's agenda, assuming that we're able to get the packet materials that provide the rest of the information.
Available information, yeah.
Second. Further discussion?
In my point of view, this requires council policy, which has not been made. There's a work session later that we'll discuss policy, and then there'll be a formal decision after whether funds will be appropriated for any more specific purpose. So I disagree with
I would say I'm like highly concerned that we would set precedent for organizations to come in and do a budget request without an action plan, without like some of those things, and then we're gonna vote. I mean, I just think, to me, I guess I would feel, yeah. I mean, we can, because I guess any organization could come in and say, hey, we want a line item, and then we do this process. So I would just kind of second what Councilor Schimmel said, is that this hasn't been a situation where the city like has been ignoring a group for a year, or saying we're supporting a group and then not funding it. It's a standalone program, and I don't have information of what the program is. Like, we work with partners all the time. We have lots of partnerships, we thrive through partnerships, but in those partnerships, there is a transactional relationship. There is, this partner is gonna perform this service or do this product, and there's payment, or we're gonna both do this and that. And I think there very well can be, but it was said just literally 2 minutes ago that the state assessment will say the recommendations, which I believe that what I thought was happening, and the reason I'm feeling a little frustrated right now, is that those recommendations go to the city club, and the city club takes the recommendations from Oregon Main Street Program and says, hey, we really need to focus on this one part of downtown. And so these are the outcomes, these are the implementation strategies, and this is going to be the revenue it takes to do that. And then come to the city in a joint work session and say, hey, this is what we found out, this is what we want to do, like, let's partner and work together. What I'm hearing today is a nonprofit coming in here and saying, hey, you signed a letter saying you would support us being Main Street. So on blind faith, without any plan of action, without any data, without any state recognition that we already went through, give us twice as much money as other organizations are asking for. Like, and again, even with the funding, I haven't, anyways, there's a lot of information I don't know that I would not want to give public funding to, like, without knowing those things.
So, in light of all of this, with, and it's brought forward to the budget committee, can this just make a spot for Main Street program? And then as we move forward with all the particulars that we find out that we need to make a clear and sound decision, then that would be able to be filled at that time.
Can I ask a clarifying question? What I recommended was we said like, hey, we can increase by 5% for downtown revitalization. I'm fine with that. I don't want to put Main Street program as the title, because what I'm hearing as of right now is City Club is Main Street program. So it would be like, I don't want there to be any confusion of the money's allocated for downtown revitalization. How we choose after work sessions, after we have a plan of action, the common goal is we're going to use this 0.5 for our downtown. But until we actually know how we're going to use it, I wouldn't want to put anything to it. I would want to put a general, that I would be more.
And, well, my concern is that this is a 2-year fund, correct? So did I understand correctly, Donna, that you want this committee to put City Club, downtown revitalization, right, on the line?
Well, I don't know that it matters. That would be, I guess, a budget thing. What does it
No, but you want
particularly?
a line on the budget, right, the city budget, to be given to you, right?
Yes,
To the
such
city.
as
So
other Main
if you
Street
want
programs
this
have.
on perpetuity, so
Correct.
to speak. So what if Adelante Mujeres comes to us next year, because they're gonna have a very difficult time having the farmer's market? Now, I want all of you to imagine Forest Grove without the farmer's market. And they have lost a lot of funding. So what do we do, next year, if Adelante Mujeres comes to us? The farmer's market will be a great loss for us. Imagine Forest Grove without.
I agree.
So do we put them on the, you know what I mean? It's a little bit, So again, this Main Street program, it is standard and average for a city to provide 25 to 30% of the budget in the form of TLT, urban renewal, sometimes some of the general fund. It depends where the city wants to pull it from. This is average. This is how the Main Street program works. I totally get what you're saying, and I thought a lot about that. This is a specific program that cities support to build up their downtown. When the downtown is more lively, just like the Main Street Association says, $18 for every dollar that is invested. That will help Adelante and everybody in that area. We understand that.
I think, yeah, I think that we've gone over sort of the benefits of the program, and what I'm not clear on is, you've mentioned a few things, and you said partnerships, and sort of, I wasn't sure if you were referring to like a literal table, or like conversations, like the program, like so far, like what meetings have happened with, you mentioned the city as a partner, you mentioned Adelante as a partner, you mentioned some other folks, and I'm wondering what meetings have taken place with those people specifically, and at what cadence?
Sure.
And, I mean, who at the city first? Who at the city?
Miles.
Okay, and that's been a Main Street, so that's been one-on-one, you and Miles?
Miles and I actually do have one-on-one, but Miles has been invited to the partner meeting, so it includes the city, Adelante Mujeres, the university, business owners, building owners. So we meet.
How often?
Twice a month right now.
Okay, and that's been happening for a year?
Approximately a year. We've received Main Street April or May, and they've been doing this for a year. And that has been a year based on the network, and actually Miles's comment, it takes at least 3 years to really get a Main Street program going. It's a slow process.
I'd love to,
Chair, I think I've asked a process question that hasn't been addressed.
so I'm gonna address it right now. This discussion, if the motion passes and get voted on yet, needs to happen next week. Because we need to get through the rest of the agenda tonight. Pushing it on to next week does not mean we'll necessarily vote to put a line item in for this item. It says that we'll have a discussion. And it's contingent upon more information being made available in the time attached to the packet. So that's what I'd like to do right now, unless there's other urgent comments, I'd like to take a vote on the motion.
Well, I'm hearing there's a specific line item for a specific organization.
That's what she's asking for, that's not what we're voting on now.
What was the motion?
The motion is that we will go next week,
Just gather more
have some more discussion if we get
I
more.
don't think there's gotta
packet.
be, what's the specific topic we're pushing?
Next week, it is to discuss whether the budget committee should recommend a line item,
Specific.
not necessarily saying city club, a line item for,
That's exactly.
I know that's what she wants, but that's not
Well, that's what
necessarily.
the
what
motion
happens.
is saying. That's what the motion is saying.
So my question, as part of the discussion, Chair, is the line item, if this isn't associated with a specific club, but a scope of work, does the line items already exist in the budget to do that? Because the city is already doing a tremendous amount of downtown revitalization. So I don't understand what line item we're wanting to add if it's just a general.
What if it was participating in Main Street program?
Right, but
But the
that's
problem
what
with
the
that
city
is
is
the
doing
city
already.
club is saying now they're in the Main Street program, so we can't say that, because then it would go to our organization. I'm sorry, I'm feeling really frustrated, but I feel like,
So Chair.
I feel like we're trying to belabor this point, like spread it out, but the motion was, I believe, I don't, go ahead, Frank, I know what to do. I'm sorry.
Well, the chair was, I understand the motion was to lay a topic, but you gotta understand what the topic is, because the topic, it seems to end. What I hear specifically is this line item goes to a specific organization,
That's right.
which is not, it's unprecedented. We don't,
So let's repeat the motion. Michael, would you make the motion?
I made a motion to bring it, basically the table to next week until we have more information.
The specific motion was, do we have a motion to move the discussion to next week's agenda, assuming we can get the packet information available by that time?
But can I be like specific, and I think this is Counselor Schimmel's point, the discussion on what? I mean, there has to be a topic on, like, it has to be, what is the discussion, what is the discussion
What is
trying
the
to?
question to be answered?
Yeah, what are we like, this is a budget meeting, and this is like exactly why we should have a work session on this topic. But, I mean,
So,
I'm trying
and
not
if
to be
the
frustrated, but
whole
it's frustrating.
committee had opportunity to read, Donna, your letter, you said you wanted to be transparent. You wanted to ensure there wasn't any favorable process, but this is precisely a favorable process. You're asking for the very thing that you claimed you didn't want. And so the perception, this is a recorded meeting, the perception to the community is gonna be that you're here asking for a specific line item for the organization that you run. Who knows if that money goes to pay for your salary or someone in your family? We don't know any of that money, but you're asking for a special favor that the council has not even made a determination that that's the direction we want to go.
So I don't understand when you're saying a special favor. I mean, as a counselor, I'm bringing this forward as any of us can to talk about a budget item or something that's important to the city. So I don't understand what you're saying.
Well, as far as what's important to the city, we've already decided what's important to the city 5 months ago.
So,
And there's money
So
going in.
he's asked a question
Yeah.
about, I think, unethics, like a problem with ethics.
No, my problem is the process. You're circumventing a process. You said you didn't want your own special inroad. If that's what this is a special inroad. I mean, your opportunity was at the start of the meeting at public comment.
No.
And then we
No.
decide if we want
For public meeting laws, a counselor can bring something to budget like this. This is where that happens. And this is what was discussed at retreat. As far as it being a favor, or I'm assuming that you're talking about an ethics issue with me being also the city club president, because you mentioned money for me or my family.
Well, we don't know that. There's nothing, there's very little disclosed about where this money goes.
But you mentioned that maybe to me or my family, when I've clearly said,
You run the organization.
no,
Okay.
I'm on the board.
I'm gonna terminate the discussion now.
I'm calling a point of personal privilege then. I've served on this council for 4 years, going on 5. And the one thing that I have learned painfully is how profoundly city leaders influence public perception. When a councilor, a mayor, or even city staff circulate misinformation, whether through speculation, rumor, or unfounded accusations, especially once those things have been clarified multiple times, it can cause lasting harm to individuals, nonprofits, and our progress as a city. Statements implying unethical conduct, disparaging a nonprofit or its intention, or suggesting a lack of follow-through, when these claims are definitely false and have been determined false, can damage the reputations and derail every mission that any of us have. Worse is when leaders, their position, they fail to publicly or privately correct information that they are hearing in the community. The community will assume what we say as counselors is true, because as a counselor, there is a certain amount of power there and respect, and people look at us and they're like, Counselor Schimmel just said that maybe this money is going to Donna or her family. You just disparaged my reputation in public. Claims of unethical behavior or conflict of interest that have already been disproven, yet continue to repeat, is a violation. What this is official violations that possibly cross over to official misconduct
misuse of power, ethics violation, nonprofit interference, violation of public meeting laws, and a breach of public trust, retaliation, coercion, and possibly legal liability. This has been going on for far too long, and this needs to end now. This organization is a nonprofit that has many volunteers, a board, no paid staff, and hasn't for 20 years. You add to that, Mayor Wenzel, that when you mentioned the chamber and the MOU, I made it clear in the email that we have tried to get them to partner with us, and they refuse because they want to have access to proprietary information for the city club. And they will not do that because it risks the city club as an organization. We have also, as a council, I think that was in the email, we realized that the city club has requested mediation twice with the chamber and has done everything in their power. What you said leads people to believe, and for no reason, nope, for no reason, you mentioned it, and it leads people to believe that there was this MOU requested and that never got signed. Maybe the city club was responsible for that, which is the reported discussions that are happening all over the community.
Okay, you've been going on for 3 minutes. I never said it was City Club's fault. I said, this is a timeline of events. It is completely true and based on the information we have received that there was not an MOU signed because there was not an agreement between the city, the chamber. So I'm not gonna let you like spin around this web. The issue on the table and the discussion, and I think we just need to vote, is there consensus from this group to continue this discussion to the next meeting to decide if City Club, AKA Main Street Program, is gonna have a line item budget? I mean, we're just like, right now, we're taking personal shots, and I'm quite offended that you're spinning this, that if you go back and listen to the recording, I said I wanted to look at the state assessment, the recommendations, see a plan of action, so I can tell the community that we represent, your money is going to this implementation to get this outcome, because that is my job. This has no personal, like, this is not a personal attack on you, on Councilor Schimmel, on anyone else. This is a budget committee doing the job of fiscal responsibility with public dollars.
Is the mayor refusing to identify that Councilor Schimmel
Okay.
disparaged
point of
myself
discussion
and
here.
the city club by his
I'm
comments?
gonna.
Why do I have to, what,
You're gonna-
I'm not running this meeting.
That's your job.
It's not my
Discussion
job
is
because it is a perception that it's true that
All right.
people perceive
All right,
that there could be a conflict because
is-
there's no
it
plan of
is
action.
clear, it is clear. that
You
there-
can
No.
disparage
Chairman is
all of us.
terminating This
Thank you,
discussion
Chairman.
now.
Thank you, Chair.
I will tell you
Thank
that
you.
a vote is going to be taken now. A yay vote means that we will have more of this discussion in the next meeting to the point of shall we create a line item in the budget for Main Street funding, which is currently tied to City Club. A no vote does mean we will not take that up in the next budget meeting, but it does not mean that it can't happen. Because as you know, we have unappropriated funds in the TLT that could be used for this purpose if the council decides to do that at a subsequent work session. So those are the two choices before you. And given the intensity of this discussion, I think maybe a roll call vote would be in order as we consider this motion. So Jamie, if you would be so kind to do that, please.
Tom Cook,
Yes.
Councilor Faulkner,
No.
Teresa Galvin, Teresa, can you hear us? Can you hear us, Teresa?
Jamie, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Oh, okay, sorry. My vote is no.
Thank you. Councilor Gustafson,
Abstain.
Mallory Highfield? No. Carla Kimsey,
No.
Councilor Marshall,
Yes.
Counselor Martinez,
Yes.
Counselor Schimmel,
No.
Counselor Valenzuela,
No.
Mayor Wenzel,
No.
Chair Thomas,
No.
Eight to three is one extension. The motion does not pass. Council, can we push any of these to the next meeting?
There's not a lot for the next meeting, and it's basically what's left, a little bit's left here, and then the approval process, discussion of the approval processes, so if you want to stop here, there's nothing really. Can we maybe go through the facility major maintenance fund before we go?
Let's do that.
Let's go through that one, and the other ones aren't really that.
I make a motion. Is that right? Well. I would like to do one more fund before we adjourn.
If not, we just,
If we have a second, we can vote on it. Second, last year when we fund and then adjourn.
right there. Okay. So the major maintenance fund, established in 2010, 11, 2 million major funds for major maintenance on general fund facilities when which will be required in the near future and do not have a dedicated funding source. The funding comes from one-time transfers from excess revenue to the general fund. If we have a surplus of revenue or will be budgeted, we'll look at doing a transfer. We're proposing a $250,000 transfer from the general fund to the major maintenance fund in the coming biennium. The proposed transfer, there'll be about $773,000 on hand to spend. Projects planned for the next biennium, there are $50,000 for parking lot maintenance, $30,000 for stucco repairs and to repaint the aquatic center. Those are next year. For the second year of the biennium, $232,000 for galvanized pipe replacement and bathroom remodels at the aquatic center. We're starting to have that pipe's getting very weak in some spots. We've had a couple areas break. We've already replaced some of it recently.
Is it just the pipe replacement, or you can actually remodel the whole bathroom?
The bathrooms are gonna get remodeled too, but they replaced it. We're gonna finish replacing the pipe. We had to break in a couple connections this year. And so, and then $250,000 to replace the pool deck of the aquatic center, which will require the aquatic center to be closed for that project.
What is that with the pool?
For replacing the pool deck.
Does that mean it has to be closed again?
Yeah.
In 26, 27.
Yeah.
Ay, ay, ay.
Isn't it
So-
getting
It's closed
retiled?
right now.
The gutters are getting retiled.
I can address.
So why have we?
We couldn't,
Go ahead.
we couldn't, I mean, even if we couldn't redo the pool deck while we were doing the gutter project because the gutter contractor was all over the pool deck driving the stuff around and doing things. So you would have had to wait till the tile replacement project was over before you could have started the pool deck replacement project, which means you would have been closed for another 6 to 8 weeks probably. So it's,
But staff discussed this at length. I think there's clearly a recognition of the closure this year. That's part of the reason that it was pushed out to 26, 27. I think that being done, and Paul, I don't want to mischaracterize the conversation. I think there was also a recognition that the budget committee felt that that would be too early. You could look at putting it into the next biennium to allow for some additional time. Those projects need to be done, but they are not necessarily, the galvanized pipe replacement project, that's probably the most critical one because some of the pipes are thin and there's kind of a higher potential for loss. But the thought was, if you're gonna have to close it for that, then you might as well do the other one. But it's not to say that they can't be delayed if the budget committee wants to delay a little bit. So I'll just, is that characterizing the conversation accurately?
you're running more of a risk with the pipe project
Than you are with the deck.
than you are with the deck.
That being said, if the pipes go, part of the pipes go bad,
We'll
You
replace
will
that.
have to close it down and go in and do it, but then you could do the project at that time. It just depends on. What's that?
How long would the closure be for the deck? Do you have like any timeline?
We don't. I don't have a timeline.
He doesn't even want to know.
Like 4 months or something.
On that,
It's like, it was like a couple weeks with this one.
I think the pipe project, because you would have to replace all of the pipes in the locker rooms and all the bathrooms. I think that's a little bit of the longer one. The thought was is that both projects are about the same time. So if you combine the two, it's not sequential, and obviously you can kind of keep the closure period shorter. So, but again, if there's sensitivity to a closure the year after next, this is something that absolutely needs to be done. But I think there was a notion in the staff conversations that it could be delayed another year. It's not a preference, but we could do it and try to increase that gap from a usability perspective. So
I think that if you sweeten the pot with a remodel of the bathrooms and locker rooms, you'll get people a lot more understanding why we're shutting the pool down again.
So you think you should up to any of that?
I would say, you don't do it in 25, you do it in 26 or 20 to 27, and you say, we're gonna remodel the bathrooms and make them lovely. While we're in there, we're just gonna fix the pipes and pool.
You're right, because it's a huge success in the library, like
Yes.
the bathrooms in the library got redone and people are like, oh my God, it's so nice.
Yeah, the deck is not the big draw. I mean, it needs to be done, but it's not the thing that pull you, you know, but the bathrooms, everybody winces at.
Yeah, they were the same as when I was like.
Yeah,
so
that's
young
the
at that
problem.
time.
So I think we should have felt that.
So I just want to, I mean, this year, the way it was planned, my kiddo swims and on swim team. You know, the high school and college seasons were not impacted, but USA Swim has lost an entire season. And I think that I know that that's not going to be received by USA Swim. So I would just say like the timeline is actually really important. It's more important. Maybe it's a few weeks, maybe it's a few months. I think it actually is really important to know that before we decide when this should happen. Because that schedule is not the same. They're not universal schedules. There are different schedules depending on the competition level.
How large is the USA Swim community?
I mean, it's a small club. They almost died in COVID. I will just tell you, there's been a real rebuilding, and right now the club is driving all the way to Phoenix.
And that is an important consideration, but we have a lot of communities
Sure.
that we're doing all sorts of stuff in there.
Absolutely. My point is that it's back to back.
Yeah.
That.
Well, there'll be a year in between, right? We're not gonna do it in 25 or probably into.
So maybe it's a
mid-26.
different season, maybe it's not that. close.
Yeah, like maybe it's a different season.
I would,
and I
I
don't
would
think
love to take the seasonality into the
I
consideration.
would just take the seasonality into
Yeah.
consideration and be
Yes.
very, very
Absolutely.
mindful of the swim seasons and that they're not the
Yes.
same for all of
Yeah.
all the levels.
The recreational swim and the aerobics, both people aren't nearly as seasonal timing affected.
Yeah, like making time depending, like that actually impacts your ability to compete at the national. So it's not like, you know, it's.
Parks and Recreation Director also looks at the times where the city earns the aquatic revenue too. I mean, 'cause
Right.
you've got
Yeah.
I mean,
Lots of.
Yeah.
don't want to close you. I mean,
Lots of
we don't want to
people.
necessarily accommodate the swim team if it's going to be a time of year where you lose a lot of revenue.
Right.
So I mean, it's a balance when they're looking.
I would just say like understanding the time.
Yeah.
Is really important. How long and at what time of year.
And then approximately about $90,000 for a unisex bathroom remodel at the fire department. I'm sure it's not just one bathroom. They just say, what? And it's for the bathrooms, and the fire district will actually pay for half of that project. So it's-
All right, there's one bathroom, I say somebody.
Well, they like nice bathrooms, what can I say? After all the projects are complete, there'll be about $121,000 available for other projects, so not a lot of money at this point. The other thing I want to go over real quick at facility major maintenance is the police facility and potential maintenance needs brought up at the last meeting last week. But this week, from staff followed up with facilities maintenance supervisor. There were many complaints about the heating issues prior to the HVAC condenser being replaced last year. And as far as the heating that goes. Now, we haven't had any complaints since we replaced the conditioner, the condenser on the HVAC system. That costs around $130,000 to replace. So the question that was asked is, we asked what it would take to separate the shared utilities between the police and the library buildings. We were able to get fairly quick estimates and quotes totaling about $400,000 from the HVAC contractor, the plumber, and some of the electrical work that we need to get done. And so if the council ultimately makes a decision to sell the police facility, the utilities would likely need to be separated prior to the building being sold. So separate party would buy the bill, would buy the police building. So that was the information that we had to follow up with on the police facility.
All right, is that it?
That's it.
If there are no objections, we will adjourn for tonight. Next week, our next meeting is Wednesday. No, Thursday, isn't it? Wednesday.
Wednesday, May 28th.
Wednesday, May 28th.
Yeah, we share all of that.
So,